Chapter 840. Straight Leap into Heaven Tier. Seeking Death. That female general released a light humph. She did not even need to move a finger, and merely sent a look at that old antique. Pooh! That old antique suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and collapsed, instantly losing all signs of life. One look, and it was enough to kill a shattering void tier elite with 14 stars of battle prowess. What kind of power was that? Fuck! Where was the Eye of Tao? Come out quickly and suppress her. Battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. It's not a physical attack, but a direct strike to the divine sense. Ma Duo Bao, Zhua Qifeng, and the other ultimate elites could tell that this female general had not used any immortal level skill, thus the natural Tao would naturally not suppress her. Additionally, if one could block an attack on the spiritual level, it would be blocked. If one could not, then a single blow would be enough. Thus it would either be an instant kill, or the opponent could not be killed no matter what. There was no third possibility. There were so many people here, but whose spirit was strong enough to withstand an attack on the level of 20 stars of shattering void tier? No one. There was definitely not a single person that could do so. Thus, everyone kept their silence. If this female general wanted to kill them, most likely, everyone here would be eliminated. Even someone as strong as Ma Duo Bao would have to die grudgingly. His physical body possessed defenses as strong as level 10 precious metal, but could he block such a terrifying spiritual attack? If even he was unable to, then who else would dare to make a move? Golden light interwove all over Ling Han's body. Suddenly, his aura began to spike madly. 7th layer of the deity transformation tier, 8th, 9th. In a mere instant, he had reached the peak of the deity transformation tier, possessing the qualifications to break through to the heaven tier. Aside from Ling Han, no one else knew what he had experienced in this process of destruction and reconstruction. It was a circle of reincarnation. Under the effects of the bitter tea, he returned to his last life, and experienced a whole lifetime in its whole. However, he had not encountered the Black Tower, and lived all the way until 400 or so years old in this realm, and even married the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. But with the invasion of the immortal realm, he swore on his life to resist. Though he had entered into the shattering void tier, his battle prowess was far below his strength in this life. Ultimately, he died with a grudge. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden committed suicide after his death, and his 4 disciples also fought to their deaths alongside him. Strong and vigorous, yet also incredibly miserable. After that, he awakened from his reincarnation dream. In the eyes of others, this was only a short while, but for Ling Han, he had experienced again 400 years of time, causing him to feel like a chrysalis that had transformed into a butterfly, completing an astonishing metamorphosis. There was not a bit of change to his cultivation, but his spirit and mental state had advanced into the shattering void tier. Then, the bitter tea began to improve his physical body and raise his cultivation level. The reason that all this could happen so quickly was because there was a drop of indestructible true fluid that had taken effect in his body, so he had quickly completed the rebuilding of his body. Even the female general had not predicted this. In her opinion, whether Ling Han could survive this reincarnation would only be decided after at least 3 days' time. Ling Han had directly advanced into the heaven tier. His mental state and spirit had already advanced into the shattering void tier, so naturally, it was impossible that he would not be able to control his sharply increased power, and with the effects of the bitter tea, he had already perfected his cultivation on the deity transformation tier to the highest level. With absolutely no reason to suppress his cultivation level, the natural result was breaking through, of course. For him, this was a familiar path, but it was also the last familiar stretch. After all, he had only advanced into the shattering void tier in his reincarnation dream. That was a change on the spiritual level and mental state, and not an actual breakthrough he had experienced physically. Hong. He had advanced into the heaven tier as his whole body shuddered. The others were stunned. He had broken through just like that. They had all seen very clearly previously, Ling Han was only in the 6th layer of the deity transformation tier, but in a mere instant, he had directly broken through to the heaven tier. This speed of upgrade was too shocking. That cup of tea was not a poison, but an ultimate treasure. All of a sudden, everyone had heated gazes, but with that female general overseeing things, who would dare step out to snatch it? But what stunned them all was that the liquid inside the teacup was quickly evaporating, and very quickly, the bottom could be seen in it, which caused everyone to lament quietly. However, there were also some that were secretly rejoicing. Since they themselves could not obtain it, they naturally did not want any other person to be able to. Even Ling Han had only drunk a mouthful. Ling Han abruptly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with the bizarre shapes of the galaxy, but they returned to tranquility soon after. At first glance, they were incredibly ordinary, but upon closer examination, one would discover that his eyes were as gentle and mild as jade, and incomparably deep. The tea was gone? He had obviously merely taken a sip. Ling Han was also slightly bewildered. Reincarnation tea. A sip is equivalent to a single reincarnation. With your cultivation level, you can only take one sip. Otherwise, you would be trapped in your reincarnation and eternally unable to break free, the female general said. The pity that Ling Han was feeling internally was instantly swept clean. He raised his clasped hands in her direction and said, "Many thanks for your help, senior." The female general smiled faintly and said, "You were the only one that dared to sit down and drink this tea, so this is your fateful opportunity. All right, the reincarnation tea is gone, so I can finally let go." She closed her eyes with a smile, and her body disappeared like a shattering mirror. She had let go of her lingering regret, so the dead soul would naturally dissipate. After she disappeared, the pressure naturally vanished completely as well. All of a sudden, everyone's eyes were focused on that teapot. Pang pang pang. They all pounced, and immediately began fighting over it. But very soon, they discovered that the teapot was already empty. Indeed, just like what the female general had said, the tea was gone, so she could finally let go. Everyone secretly lamented. Though there had only been half a cup of the reincarnation tea previously, with their ability, they would only be able to drink a mouthful. Half a cup would be enough for 7 or 8 of them to drink. This was a divine tea. Everyone hung their heads and stamped their feet. Just now, if they had just been a bit braver, then wouldn't they have been able to obtain an unprecedented fateful opportunity? It was not something as simple as Ling Han's cultivation level rising. Everyone could sense that there was an obvious difference about him, though they could not clearly pinpoint it. It was as if his whole person had been greatly improved on the life level. "This teapot is still hot," someone exclaimed in a trembling voice. The others were stunned. This was really enough to scare them to death. The ship came out of the empty void, and who knew how many years had passed, yet the teapot was actually still hot. How strange was that? "Ling Han, you okay now?" Hun Yo asked delicately. Ling Han nodded, then smiled and said, "I'm fine." Was Nyo worried? "A bit. Just a little bit?" Hun Yo formed a gap with her hands to indicate that she was indeed filled with confidence in Ling Han. Ling Han laughed heartily. He looked within himself, and could not help but grin. He had experienced a very great change. His spirit had become incredibly firm, far exceeding any ordinary shattering void tier cultivators. His physical body had been tough in the first place, and now that his spirit had also improved, it had compensated for his last shortcoming. Sword Heart has actually reached major accomplishment, he said to himself. Though he had not reached the level of a perfected Sword Heart, he was but a hair's breadth away. "My tanned brother, you are indeed shockingly lucky," Ma Duobao said ruefully. There were so many people here, yet only Ling Han dared to sit down and drink the tea. This was his fateful opportunity. Who asked the others to choose to give it up? Yet Ling Han knew that he would really not dare be so reckless without the protection of the Black Tower. This was the true basis of his confidence. He was not going to say this, of course. Since the reincarnation tea was finished, they continued their way upwards. When they arrived at the 4th level, the rooms here were even bigger. But, looking at the way they were arranged, they did not look like bedrooms, but rather something akin to conference rooms. Similarly, there were also 5-man teams of female soldiers patrolling here, and they launched attacks in their direction. Chapter 841. Who is she? Ling Han discovered that his current spirit was very firm, and the barrage of attacks from the dead souls could no longer affect him as easily. In the past, his spirit could endure about 8 or 10 years of this. Now, he would be unafraid even in 100 or 1,000 years. After experiencing a reincarnation cycle, his spirit was stronger than even those of the majority of shattering void tier elites. The space on this floor was especially huge. Aside from conference rooms, They also saw some cannons. Closely interwoven patterns covered them, and a mere look would cause shivers to run up one's spine. There was a bone-deep, chilling fear to them. Unfortunately, these cannons had been destroyed. This must be a godly metal. Everyone stared at those destroyed cannons. They had been forged from metal, and since they could be used here, how astonishing would the materials used to forge these cannons be? They all wanted to take these cannons, but they had no means of approaching them at all. Those patterns were too frightening. A shattering void tier elite walked quickly, but just as he did, he was shattered into pieces without a sound. That was the might of the patterns. Even if they were not active, they were a deadly weapon. They could not be taken. They all felt like they were about to be driven mad. What kind of treasure was that? It was godly metal, yet they could only stare blindly at it. It almost made them want to throw up blood. Additionally, with how destructive these patterns were, if one could collect them, they in themselves would be a deadly weapon. Killing shattering void tier elites would be child's play. So what if they coveted it? They could only leave. Another floor up, and they had reached the deck. Though they had previously leaped and soared, wanting to board the ship directly from the deck, not only had none of them succeed, they even had no idea what the situation was like on the deck. No matter how high they flew, they could not see it clearly, which was very bizarre. This time, they finally reached the deck from the inside, and were able to have a clear look. How shocking! The moment they were on the deck, they all exclaimed in astonishment. Was this place a battlefield from hell? They saw that there were corpses lying all over the deck. Some of them were human, and there were also half-human, half-beast creatures. They had wings and horns, completely inky black all over. If there was no moon at night, they would even accidentally bump right into them. Blood pooled all over the whole deck. There were detached limbs and heads ripped off. They exuded a terrifying killing aura, which solidified and hung in the air. But the most terrifying thing was a colossal jar placed in the center of the deck. It was filled with detached heads, and they were all horned half-humans. Their eyes were still bright, emitting a terrifying pressure. With only a single look, all of them felt as if their bodies would explode at any moment. Thus, they hurriedly lowered their heads, and did not dare to look a second time. What kind of creatures were these? They could visualize this huge vessel encountered an attack, and both sides should have died in battle. Furthermore, the shock waves created from the battle were so large that they directly tore a hole in space, and entered into the empty void. It wasn't until Ma Duo Bao slashed open space that this huge ship finally reappeared. This was too frightening. Majority of the things on board the ship had vanished, which meant that the ship's defenses were no longer effective. Yet, these corpses were still there, and even looked like they had just died recently, which showed how powerful these beings had been. Even if they were dead, the empty void could not destroy their bodies. Ling Han cast his gaze afar, and could see there was a woman standing proudly at the ship's bow. The cloak behind her had stretched out for almost 10 meters, and she wore a golden battle armor underneath it. It was very tight-fitting, and perfectly showed off her figure. They only saw her back, yet it was enough to intoxicate both the heart and spirit. Was she a ghost as well? Everyone proceeded with caution. The corpses here were too powerful, and they were afraid that a single touch would be enough to kill them. How vast could a kilometer-long deck be? Very soon, they arrived at the ship's bow, and stood behind that woman. Hong, her cloak moved. The woman turned around. All of a sudden, the skies changed color, and it was like the whole world was going to collapse. What kind of ultimate elite was this? She had merely turned around, and it could cause such change in the environment. So beautiful! After that woman had turned around, everyone looked enraptured. She was a woman with peerless talent, and furthermore had a kind of indescribable bearing of nobility. Those like Zhu Xian'er and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden were no inferior to her in beauty, but if they stood beside her, they would pale in comparison as if they were mere village girls. A deity from the 9 heavens. In that instant, they all had this thought in their heads. No matter how old they were, the hearts of the men were filled with adoration, and even those women whose hearts were like still water could feel a ripple in their hearts. She was attractive to both men and women. Yet Ling Han instantly felt his limbs freeze. The appearance of this woman was exactly the same as the human-shaped spirit base in Hunyou's Dantian. A spirit base looking like a human was incredibly bizarre by itself, but now, an even more bizarre thing had appeared. There was actually a real person that looked the same. Hunyo had said before that she had a kind of familiar feeling about this huge ship, just as if she had been here before. And now, there appeared a woman that looked exactly like the spirit base inside her. If he still thought that there was absolutely no link between her and this godly vessel, that would really be strange. After a long while, someone pointed at an object floating in the empty air in front of the woman, and exclaimed in shock, "What is that?" "It seems like an egg." "It indeed is an egg. Its surface seems to be covered by patterns, but I can't see anything at all." "That would be a godly egg then. If we eat it, would we immediately become an ultimate elite on the immortal level?" More and more people turned their attention to the object in front of the woman. They all knew that this woman was already dead, and what was left was merely a dead spirit. No matter how beautiful or how moving her bearing was, did it matter? These people were all in the shattering void tier, and they very quickly came back to themselves. Becoming stronger was their true unchanging pursuit. Hunyo could not help but be distracted and exclaimed, "Someone is calling Nyo. So strange, Nyo cannot control herself." She raised her foot and walked forwards. "Hunyo." Ling Han stretched out his hand, wanting to hold Hunyo. Yet, he immediately felt a pain in his chest, and his arm started to hang down helplessly. Step by step, Hunyo walked to stand in front of that woman, and stretched out a hand to grasp that egg. That indeed was an egg. No matter how they looked at it, it looked like an egg. When her small hand came into contact with it, that egg immediately exuded brilliant light. Then with a xiao, it sank into Hunyo's chest, and disappeared completely. "You have finally come," the woman said gently. Her voice was as melodious as if it came directly from the heavens. "Who are you? Does Nyo know you?" Hunyo mumbled. "I am your last life, you are my next life, and from now on, you are the complete you," the woman said. Her figure began to fade, ready to disappear. "Guarding this egg. Was that her dying wish?" "Nyo is Ling Han's, not yours," Hunyo immediately rebutted. "The godly egg. The godly egg." Everyone's eyes were fixed on Hunyo. The egg was definitely the absolutely most precious object on the whole ship. The reincarnation tea was already so incredible, so what kind of benefits could this godly egg bring? "Hand it over. Or die." The members of the 1,000 Corpse sect and the 5 sects all surrounded Hunyo, their killing intent spiking. That woman opposite them was about to dissipate, so they had no need to take her to heart. Hunyo was merely a little girl in the heaven tier, so how could they not be able to deal with her? "Do you have to force me to kill even at the end?" the woman that was about to dissipate asked. She stretched out a dainty hand, and with a palm strike, pa 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 pa, those elites that were at the front all exploded. Wu Gaoyuan, who was brandishing the mountain and river axe at the front, also bore the brunt of the attack. Exploded in an instant. In front of her, 18 stars of shattering void tier was not even enough. Immortal level strength. Xiaofan and the other 3 prodigies from the immortal realm all stopped in shock, looking incredibly fearful. Hong, the Eye of Tao, appeared abruptly, and blinked above the vessel. Finally, this guy was drawn out. Chapter 842. The Eye of Heavenly Tao fled. The aura that woman released in that single instant had completely surpassed the shattering void tier, and caused the whole realm to tremble. It had even radiated out of this realm, and was spreading out towards even farther regions. The Eye of Heavenly Tao appeared. It represented the will of this realm, and would definitely not allow any being that would affect the balance of this realm to exist. This woman was going to be expelled. However, she was a dead soul in the first place, so there was no difference whether she was going to be expelled or not. In the first place, she was just about to dissipate. The Eye of Heavenly Tao blinked its huge eye, and a tear into the empty void immediately appeared beside the woman. It quickly enlarged, preparing to swallow her. As long as she was pulled into the empty void, then she would be completely expelled out of this realm. As for where she would once reappear, that was not going to be a concern for the Eye of Heavenly Tao. "If I want to leave, I naturally will." The woman waved a hand, and the rip that had just opened up into the empty void was immediately smoothed over as if it had never appeared in the first place. This. Everyone was dumbstruck. The members of the Five Sects and Thousand Corpse sect were all very clear that no matter how strong the immortals were, they would not be able to match the powers of a whole realm. If they wanted to enter into this realm, they had to suppress their powers, and the moment they released powers on the immortal level, they would be expelled, unable to remain in this plane. This was an ironclad rule. Thus, all those years ago, the alternative dragon managed to wreak havoc unhindered, and even descended immortals could not deal with him. But now, the Eye of Heavenly Tao had appeared to chase her off, but she actually managed to still stay behind. How powerful was that? Unfair, this was too unfair. Everyone was trembling. This level of power had exceeded their understanding. Only Ling Han was prepared for this. Previously, Hunyao had chased off the Eye of Heavenly Tao with a shout, and she had an incomparably intimate relation with this woman, so the latter could only be even stronger. The Eye of Heavenly Tao represented the will of the world. It by itself was emotionless. It stared at the woman, and once again launched an attack. Another rip into the empty void opened up. Humph! The woman seemed to be angered, and casually delivered a smack. Pa! The Eye of Heavenly Tao was instantly struck back, and Ling Han, after activating the Eye of Truth, had seen it even clearer. A wound had appeared on the Eye of Heavenly Tao, and there was blood seeping out. Dark clouds swirled, and the world lamented. The Eye of Heavenly Tao had been wounded, and that was a failure of the entire realm. This. Even the Eye of Heavenly Tao could be wounded? This was an absolutely invincible power, and she could do as she willed in this realm. Who else would be able to stop her? One had to know that she currently was only a dead soul. Then what about when she had been alive? How strong had she been then? Yet, such an existence had also died in battle. Just what kind of enemies had she faced? Ling Han could not help but feel a shudder in his heart, worried for Hunyao's sake. That woman said that she was Hunyao's last life, and Hunyao was her next life. That also meant that if her powerful enemies had not died, Hunyao would need to face such a strong enemy too. When immortals descended to the lower realm, at least beings like the Five Sects and Yi Shuang Shuangthi would be suppressed by the realm powers, yet this woman could actually injure the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Furthermore, it was when she was in dead soul form. This meant that she had naturally been even more awesome in her life. Following this line of deduction, how powerful would her enemies be? The Eye of Heavenly Tao blinked in the skies, causing ripples in the realm like water boiling, yet in a mere flash, it had disappeared from sight. Did this mean something like, I am not going to interfere anymore? They were all dumbfounded. Even the Eye of Heavenly Tao was not a match. Damn, this woman was so strong she could defy nature. They were all shaking. Such a powerful being had completely exceeded their expectations. You will have to tread the path of your future on your own, the woman said, looking at Hunyao with gentle eyes. Her body was continuing to dissipate. Finally, she had disappeared completely without a trace. Everyone else was looking at Hunyao. At that moment, no one dared to make a move. Who knew if that woman would return? Previously, she was also dissipating, yet she had killed an elite of 18 stars of shattering void tier as easily as picking out an object from her bag. She had even scared off the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Hong long, the whole godly ship was wailing, and beginning to crumble. As it crumbled, the godly wood that could not be damaged even with the frenzied attacks of the shattering void tier elites began breaking into pieces. Even those damaged cannons were the same. In only a single instant, the ship had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a pile of ash. It was as if its mission was merely to travel out of the empty void and hand that egg over to Hunyao. Perhaps it was not coincidence that the godly ship had appeared here. It might have been drawn out by Hunyao. Ma Duobao picked up the mountain and river axe lying on the ground, smiled calmly, and said, "Let's continue the battle." Hong, he no longer kept any reservations, and the patterns on his body lit up consecutively, interweaving into a brilliant killing formation. The #1 killing formation in this world that could eliminate even gods. Chen Wenshi and Zhua Qifeng released terrible screams, having been suddenly pulled in by the killing formation, and were instantly eliminated. Though the spirit tools they had been wielding before had been bathed in immortal blood, and were incredibly frightening, they were completely suppressed after entering the huge ship. Their immortal traits had disappeared, and now with Ma Duobao's sudden outburst, he had instantly eliminated 2 powerful beings. The 8 kings also began attacking the elites of the 5 sects, furious like wolves and tigers. This was the final battle. The 5 sects lost, and even the help of the 1,000 Corpse sect was useless. Who would have imagined that Ma Duo Bao was actually the #1 killing formation of the world, with battle prowess strong enough to kill even gods? In the immortal realm, that would only be merely an empty threat, but here where the immortals would be suppressed by the realm powers, it made killing gods possible. Moreover, Xiao Miaoyan and Yang Guan both had 18 stars of battle prowess. After an 18-eyed corpse king had been killed as well, the Shattering Void tier elites all attempted to flee recklessly. After igniting their life force, their speed was astonishingly fast. However, though they managed to flee, practically none below Shattering Void tier managed to. Aside from a limited few that had been taken away by the Shattering Void tier elites in their flight, the others either died in battle or surrendered. The 5 sects' rule over the middle state, and their influence over the 4 regions, was thus brought to an end. Some still managed to flee. Ling Han shook his head. Xiao Miaoyan and Guan Yang both had 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess, and aside from Ma Duo Bao, no one else could suppress them. If they missed this chance to defeat them all in one go in the future, it would be them in the open and their enemies in secret, and they would be impeded. 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess would be enough to stir up trouble. My tanned brother, now that the world is conquered, a few remaining clowns would not be able to cause any big ripples. If they dare appear, I will definitely kill them. Ma Duo Bao laughed. When we split open the skies, I will invite you to join us again so that we can all witness this magnificent feat together. All right. Ling Han nodded. He also had to observe Hu Niu closely. What kind of massive effects would that egg bring to the little girl? They split up and bade their farewells before they respectively turned around and left. At the first instant, Ling Han brought Hu Niu into the Black Tower, and had Small Tower conduct a detailed examination on her. I can't. Small Tower shook its head. I can't do it with my current abilities. I have to first recover to my complete form. Ling Han could not help but frown and asked Hu Niu, "Niu, do you feel any discomfort or anything off?" Hu Niu pondered earnestly, then nodded with utmost seriousness. She said, "Yes." "Where?" "I'm hungry." This glutton. Chapter 843. Staging a Comeback. That egg was obviously extremely rare, and its preciousness far exceeded the reincarnation teas. However, it turned out that there wasn't even the slightest change in Hu Niu, which made Ling Han utterly puzzled. In the midst of such puzzlement, Ling Han returned to the North region. At this time, the 4 regions had been unified under the banner of the Great Ling Empire, and as policies beneficial to the nation and people's welfare were passed down, the hearts of the people were quickly united. Ling Han gave it a try. Upon condensing the power of the nation, his battle prowess actually reached an amazing 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. The battle prowess of Shattering Void tier was too strong. Therefore, it could be said that the addition of the power of the nation allowed for the attainment of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier, and the battle prowess of Ling Han himself could be disregarded. And yet, the reason he was able to become so powerful was because his physique was extremely strong. If it was any other heaven tier cultivator, the addition of power of the nation could only allow the attainment of battle prowess of 20 stars of heaven tier, and couldn't be upgraded any further. Otherwise, the body would collapse first. However, Ling Han was different. His body was as strong as level 10 precious metal, enough to bear the battle prowess of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. And this was already near his body's limits. It was no wonder that Ma Duo Bao had no intention of expanding the nation's territory and increasing the number of people under his jurisdiction. His body was also similar to level 10 precious metal in toughness. At most, he could only attain a 10 stars increase in battle prowess. Therefore, it would be meaningless for him to further expand the territory. As the saying went, too much was as bad as not enough. Ling Han did not have such a worry. If he advanced into the Shattering Void tier, he could still improve his body by another level to reach the stage of godly metal. In that case, what would be the limit of power of the nation that he could bear? 20 stars? 30 stars? 50 stars? Perhaps the will of all the realm's people could be added upon him alone, without any fear that this would cause his body to explode. Only now did Ling Han realize the importance of having a tyrannically strong body. And, when it was combined with the power of the nation, it made him invincibly powerful. Of course, this was also because he had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, which allowed him to have such a body. Power such as this could not be duplicated. Currently, his spirit was extremely powerful. His mental state had even reached the Shattering Void tier in advance, allowing him to perfectly control the prowess of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. His comprehension of martial arts also saw amazingly rapid progress. When one had reached his cultivation level, the comprehension of martial arts equaled the comprehension of Tao, the strength of the spirit, and the improvement of mental state. This allowed him to have absolutely no bottleneck in breaking through. He was only required to constantly increase the accumulation of origin power. Thus, advancing through the levels was naturally done at lightning speed. In this way, it was very likely that he could charge into the Shattering Void tier within a year. The Rain Emperor and Murong Qing came back with a large number of people. Now that the 5 great sects had been demolished, it was naturally impossible for the Restore Heaven Academy to continue operating. These people were the elites of elites, and the geniuses among geniuses. The 5 great sects had intended to bring them into the immortal realm as hired thugs, which showed that they all had great potential, and were worthy to be nurtured. The thing that Ling Han lacked the least now was cultivation resources. The Purple Moon Empire was spreading the truth about the reckoning everywhere. In collaboration, Ling Han also announced the truth to all of the 4 regions so that everyone would know that in order to be rid of the fate of being used to make the realm pill, the only option would be to split open the sky. In the beginning, most people were naturally skeptical. After all, they had been brainwashed by the 5 great sects for more than 10,000 years. However, as time passed by, more and more evidence was brought up, and naturally more people had chosen to believe it. The more united the people's hearts were, the stronger the power of the nation. With the help of the Rain Emperor, Helian Sun Shui's pressure was greatly reduced. As he had also been an emperor for so many years, he was naturally shrewd and ruthless in handling the nation's affairs, and was not at all inferior to her. Ma Duobao had agreed with Ling Han that he would use 1 year's time to make preparations, after which he would split open the sky. Therefore, Ling Han had intended to use this 1 year to properly cultivate. If Ma Duobao was able to split open the sky, that would naturally be great, and he would bask in the glory. Otherwise, he would have to step up to the task. This was the only way out for the lower realm. Ling Han was prepared to change his cultivation technique after a certain period of time. It was obtained not from the sea race, but from the 5 great sections. After all, the cultivation techniques of the sea race were only suited for the sea race. When the 5 great sects were demolished, Ma Duobao very generously allowed Ling Han to enter into one of the sects to select a cultivation technique. Ling Han picked the extreme yang technique, which was maybe not the most suitable for him, but still better than the rest. Most importantly, Ling Han was only required to advance into the Shattering Void tier, and that was all. Upon entering the immortal realm, there naturally would be godly techniques for him to cultivate. Therefore, he ignored the fact that his cultivation speed at the Shattering Void tier was slightly slower. There were still some people of the 5 great sects who had escaped. However, they were currently in fright and considered as target of scorn, so how would they dare to come out? 3 months had passed, and everything was calm, while Ling Han's cultivation was also skyrocketing. He had already entered the 3rd layer of the Heaven tier. His body arts had also improved significantly. However, Ling Han believed that if Xiao Miaoyan and the others reappeared, the target would be him. No matter how brave, they wouldn't dare to go to find Ma Duobao. He was the #1 killing formation after all. It would be a trip of no return for them. Thus, he could only be dealt with by true immortals. They had communicated with the 5 sects of the immortal realm through a special channel, and reported the matter regarding the godly vessel. It was believed that people from the immortal realm would come. That woman's power exceeded the common sense. She had to be supremely powerful in the immortal realm. Then, how precious the treasure she had guarded with her life would be. Therefore, Ling Han thought that he and Hunyo would become the main target of the 5 sects' attacks. In addition, the 1,000 Corpse sect was expected to be eager to make a move. The reason why they had not done so was because they weren't sure whether Ma Duobao was deliberately using Ling Han as a bait to lure them out. Once again, another month had passed, and what was to come finally came. Xiao Miaoyan and Guanyang appeared, and with one sword strike, the defensive barrier formed by the totem immediately collapsed. These 2 people forcefully entered, looking murderous. "Ling Han, you had better come out now," they both shouted. "If you still don't come out, We will slaughter everyone in the imperial capital, and then annihilate one city every day. Can you stand by and watch so many people die for your sake? I cannot. Ling Han trod on air, and stood on the same height as Xiao Miaoyan and Guan Yang, while his face bore a confident smile. I have come, but the ending will not be what you think. Rather, it will be me taking down both of you. Ha ha ha. Xiao Miaoyan and Guan Yang were both laughing. They had already ascertained the location of Ma Duo Bao. If the other party wanted to come over and help, it would take at least 3 days. Wouldn't 3 days be enough for them to kill a cultivator of the heaven tier over a few hundred times? Hence, they weren't in a hurry to take action. Of course, they wouldn't be intentionally wasting time, either. Where did such confidence of yours come from? Xiao Miaoyan said coldly, exuding anger. Being the pride of the immortal realm, she actually became like a street rat having to go into hiding upon descending to the lower realm. How could she accept such humiliation? Now, she intended to take out her resentment on Ling Han. Had the latter not intervened, the Purple Moon Empire would have already lost their bet, and wouldn't be able to make a move within 100 years. With 100 years' time, the 5 sects of the immortal realm should have already finished setting up the channel to the lower realm. So what of the world's #1 killing formation? Even though he couldn't be killed, he could be trapped in exile. They'd let him watch the creatures of the entire realm be refined into an alchemical pill. Hence, her hatred for Ling Han even exceeded that for Ma Duo Bao. Ling Han did not answer. He just gazed into the distance and said, Azura Demon Emperor. Since you have come, why do you hide yourself? Hey, you're just a mere little cultivator of the heaven tier. How did you discover me? The Azura Demon Emperor revealed his appearance in the distance, a puzzled and astonished expression on his face. Chapter 844. Capturing the Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han smiled nonchalantly and said, You practically reek of evil, so how hard can it be to locate you? I can sniff you out from 100 li. This, of course, was just talk. In reality, it was because he had control of the power of the nation. If he willed it, the entire nation's every move could be monitored through the totems over the various cities. It was just that manpower was limited. He could not be distracted or have nothing better to do than to check up on other people's private life. However, with his family and friends residing in the imperial capital, he naturally had it under his control. Hang, just a puny heaven-tier warrior. You don't even know how wide the gap between us is. I, for one, would like to hear what capabilities you have to make it out of here alive. Xiao Miaoyan sneered. She despised Ling Han to the core. Kid, this woman's looks are not bad. Catch her for Lord Rabbit to serve as a maid. Rabbit shouted sneakily from below. Xiao Miaoyan immediately flew into a rage, but as her glance swept over Rabbit, she could not refrain from inadvertently asking, a descendant of Zong Qingyi? What Zong Qingyi? You ought to call him ancestor, snapped Rabbit at once. Xiao Miaoyan's pretty face twitched, but she surprisingly no longer refuted. Zong Qingyi was also an exceedingly outstanding figure in the immortal realm. Hence, the 5 sects would not lay their hands on his descendants. Otherwise, Rabbit's bloodline would have gone extinct long ago. She paid no heed to it, and kept staring at Ling Han as she said, Although a physique of level 10 precious metal is strong, as long as it falls into my hands, there are plenty of means to refine you. That does sound kinda scary. Ling Han guffawed with hearty laughter. The lot of you cruelly harmed the living beings of the lower realm, being maniacal to the extent of refining a whole realm into an alchemical pill. Today, I will slay the lot of you, and sever your heads to offer as sacrifices to our ancestors. Kid, don't. Leave that woman for Lord Rabbit to serve as a maid. That man also can be used as a mount for Lord Rabbit. It would be best if you could leave both. Rabbit interjected again. Xiao Miaoyan naturally directly ignored Rabbit, and said, You lot gathered spiritual herbs and killed demonic beasts. Don't tell me that is not maniacal. Ha 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 ha. Ling Han laughed coldly. To actually compare beings of the same race as yourself to demonic beasts, I see you are cold-blooded to the extreme. Same race. Guan Yang swept his eyes across the entire imperial capital disdainfully, then asked in return, Are you guys worthy of it? There was nothing much to say anymore. Well, bring it on. Today, don't even think of running away, the 3 of you. What perfect timing to get rid of a huge trouble. Ling Han retorted frostily. Xiao Miaoyan and Guan Yang both possessed battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, undoubtedly being the largest threat. Getting rid of them now, the rest would not be much of a trouble. The 8 kings were more than capable of taking care of it. You talk as if you are very powerful. The Azura Demon Emperor scoffed. At the same time, he felt great displeasure in his heart. He and Xiao Miaoyan's group were not together. Rather, he had arrived in the vicinity of the imperial capital much earlier, and was waiting for an opportunity to capture either Ling Han or Hu Niu. Seeing Xiao Miaoyan and her companion appear, the idea of taking advantage of them occurred to him to use them as cover to stealthily come over. Yet, he was unexpectedly exposed by Ling Han's shout. Ling Han let his piercing gaze run over Xiao Miaoyan and Guan Yang, completely ignoring the Azura Demon Emperor, which made the latter nearly mad with fury. Back in the day, he was also one of the super elites who struck fear into the whole lower realm. Then, at the cost of countless deaths, he was divided into 9 parts to suppress him. Yet now, Ling Han regarded him as nothing. Damn it, if it was not that his level had dropped sharply, and for his being assigned an important mission, he would have burst forth with immortal level power to kill off Ling Han now, come hell or high water. Small tower. Ling Han called out softly in his heart. The black tower immediately channeled forth energy into him, and his strength instantly soared. In addition, he drew out power of the nation, making his strength rise further. What? Xiao Miaoyan and the others all cried out in alarm at the same time. How come Ling Han seemed to have changed into a totally different person in a flash? How did the feel of this kind of energy cause them to shudder involuntarily? Even those with the battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier were shuddering, so just what kind of changes actually took place in Ling Han's body? Ling Han gave a snort, and drew out the Revere Life Sword. With a jerk of his hand, this #1 killing sword was immediately activated, emitting infinite brilliance. Now that Ling Han had truly achieved the strength of the Shattering Void tier, he naturally fully released this sword's power. I don't believe. Xiao Miaoyan denounced him loudly. A pair of huge wings sprouted from her back, and with a light flap, her energy was immediately heightened to a great extent. Wielding a blood-red treasured sword, she charged to meet Ling Han head-on. She circulated her bloodline, and raised the level of her battle prowess to the utmost. This was the battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier. Without using her bloodline, her battle prowess was only 16 to 17 stars. Hong! The 2 swords clashed, causing an epic burst of amazing light rays. The sword chi shot straight up into the vast sky, and again a wide patch of stars and constellations took the brunt of it as they fell in profusion from the impact. Immediately following this, amid the mass of light that burst forth, a person was seen being catapulted through it, like a cannonball being shot, heavily smashing into the distant mountains and immediately vanishing there. Hong long long, a mountain peak collapsed, issuing a loud noise and causing huge tremors to course through the ground. Guan Yang stared dumbly. He could see clearly that the person who flew out just now was precisely Xiao Miaoyan. This. As strong as Xiao Miaoyan was, she also could not stop Ling Han's sword. What kind of battle prowess was this? The Azura Demon Emperor's body was also trembling too scary. Another monster attaining the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier finally appeared. This was indeed the pinnacle of humanity. Even he, an unusual being from the netherworld, might be killed. Run! Azura Demon Emperor's fighting intent immediately vanished, and he only wanted to sneak away now. This turn of events was something he never would have envisioned when he first met Ling Han. To think that there would actually be a day that he would lose his guts from being terrified by Ling Han. Ling Han drew up his long sword. Xiao Miaoyan had actually fought him forcefully head-on. Wasn't that courting death? Originally, with her battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, it would be decent enough for her to contend with him for a few rounds, yet she persisted to fight him head-on. Thus, she was naturally inflicted with heavy injuries in just one move. With the energy channeled from the Black Tower and the addition of the power of the nation, his strength has already reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. Note that it was strength that had reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier without having to use any secret arts at all. Any random strike of his already represented the strongest in this world. Then, if he circulated the 3 styles of Black Origin, or perhaps the Earth Overturning Seal and other such, what kind of extent would his battle prowess reach? No wonder that the 5 sects wanted to draw Ma Duobao out from the Purple Moon Empire for another fight to the death. Ma Duobao, with the addition of the power of the nation, would really match the battle prowess of a god. A battle prowess of a mortal grade that wasn't allowed to exist by the laws of heaven and earth in this realm. Want to flee? Ling Han smiled coldly, striking his sword towards the Azura Demon Emperor. Pooh! The Azura Demon Emperor's body immediately collapsed to pieces, without even a slight doubt. Now, what did one with battle prowess of 15 stars of shattering void tear make in the face of Ling Han? For sure, he would be dead in one blow. However, the Azura Demon Emperor would not die so easily. Though the body had already been shattered to pieces, a gust of black chi actually floated out, unceasingly intertwining as if forming some kind of body, but it was not at all firm. He was already without a form originally. Rather, he evolved from the demonic chi of primal chaos. Ling Han struck again with his sword. The demonic chi was chopped into two, but it very quickly fused back together again as if owning an undying body. Ha ha ha, I am transformed from the demonic chi of primal chaos, and thus an existence that would not die eternally. You want to kill me? It is still 1,000,000 years too early for you. The Azura Demon Emperor transmitted this message through his divine sense. Since his body was no more, he was naturally unable to convey it through speech. Ling Han snorted, and his figure charged right over. The sword heart stirred, and abruptly attacked the Azura Demon Emperor. Ah! The divine sense of the Azura Demon Emperor immediately gave out a horrible shriek. The sword heart, perfected, indeed could slay souls, its effect especially striking when used on this kind of evil demon. Taking advantage of the split second of his divine sense being temporarily disconnected, Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed the Azura Demon Emperor, then put him into the Black Tower. Chapter 845. Take a single strike from my sword. Having entered the Black Tower, one could only comply and submit no matter how powerful one was. Ling Han turned around and looked at Yang Guan. His battle with the Azura Demon Emperor might have seemed long, but in reality, it was simply a matter of 2 or 3 strikes. At this time, Yang Guan was still under immense shock, and had only started to return to his senses just a moment ago. Pang! From a distance, Xiao Miaoyan flew out of the broken mountain. The clothes on her body were torn in many places, revealing her snow-white skin, making her appear extremely alluring. Blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth, and her face was pale, her hair somewhat messy, and her eyes full of fear. She was truly scared. How could she match the current Ling Han? She was really about to cry. Battle prowess of 18 stars for a shattering void cultivator in the immortal realm could practically wipe out someone of the same age, at least within the 5 great sects territory, but she was actually slapped in the face repeatedly upon descending onto the lower realm. Ma Duobao, a mysterious elite in the huge ship, and now a Ling Han was added. Could it be that this was the immortal realm instead? Retreat! She immediately made up her mind. Damn it, she would never come here ever again. It would be better to wait for the immortal realm to send their people here first before proceeding further. Such a monster should be dealt with by people of the immortal realm. Without another word, Yang Guan just turned around and ran. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, Brother Guan, in any case, you are the pride of the immortal realm. How is it that you came here full of confidence and in high spirits, yet now leave with your tail between your legs without even using a single move? That's inexcusable. Come, let us spar. Spar your sister. Yang Guan's cheek began to twitch. It might have appeared that Xiao Miaoyan had only exchanged a single blow, but that resulted in her taking a hit and being flung far away. She might still appear to be perfectly fine, but was actually suffering from a very serious internal injury. If not treated in time, there would be endless dire consequences. But now, there was no time to heal her. He had to flee for his life first. He had to keep himself alive. Upon his return to the immortal realm, there would be spiritual medicine that could treat his injury. Brother Guan is so uncooperative. Then you leave me with no choice. Ling Han activated the Demon Fairy Step and Thunderclap 9th Heaven. His speed as quick as a demon, he instantly stopped in front of Guan Yang to block his path. Guan Yang clenched his teeth, and Hong, light flickered over his body. He ignited his life force with the intention of breaking out of Ling Han's hold. Didn't you look down upon creatures of the lower realm? Ling gave a cold smile. With a palm strike, an overflowing print of golden light came in full force, and covered the entire sky. Now, what are you escaping for? Come fight an ant like me from the lower realm. Yongguan tried escaping. Pang, though his speed was fast, the entire space around him had been sealed off with an imprint of golden light, and he had actually bounced back after hitting against it. He was stunned. By burning his life force, a shattering void tier cultivator with battle prowess of 20 stars wouldn't be able to stop his escape, but he was actually blocked now. What did this mean? Ling Han's battle prowess had actually surpassed 20 stars. Strength could not exceed the limit of 20 stars of shattering void tier, but that didn't mean that the same would be true for battle prowess. I will launch a single strike with my sword. If you can stop it, I will spare your life. Ling Han shouted. This is for real. These 2 sentences, he announced to the world through the totem. Long live His Majesty. Slaughter the immortals. Slaughter the immortals. Slaughter the immortals. The people of the imperial capital who knew the truth immediately cheered. Those in the other cities might not be clear the reasons behind this, but they were all fired up because they felt that their emperor was too domineering. Of course, Hellion Sun Shui had explained the whole event in advance through the totem. This was the best time for Ling Han to establish an invincible image. Soon, the entire Great Ling Empire knew that their emperor was fighting with the immortals. That was, the culprit that wanted to make use of them to concoct an alchemical pill. Yang Guan and Xiao Miaoyan actually weren't immortals, but why bother with these details? Hellion Sun Shui even wanted to say that these 2 people were the strongest of the immortals so that Ling Han would seem even more domineering. While the people of the nation were all fired up, Ling Han realized that the power of the nation that he had absorbed was somewhat stronger, so much so that he felt that he was being filled up to a bursting point. With the 4 regions combined, they were comparable to the middle state. True enough, the physique of level 10 precious metal could only absorb so much power of the nation. Any more, and it would cause one to burst. Even someone like Ma Duobao had the self-awareness to know that just a portion from the middle state was enough to drive him up the wall. Ling Han brandished his sword, and used the mysterious 3000 technique. How can it be? How could you possibly know? Pooh! Yang Guan was shocked upon seeing the mysterious 3000. This was a technique of the Heaven's Sword sect that wouldn't be passed down easily. How could it appear in the hands of an ant from the lower realm? But before he could finish speaking, his body was sliced to pieces by the sword ray. There was just too much of a gap between his battle prowess and physique in comparison to Ling Han's current state. So naturally there wasn't any need to use 10,000 techniques return to one. With just a single strike, one known as the Pride of the Immortal Realm was killed just like this, dying in the land of the lower realm. The blood of shattering void tier cultivators was spilled, and with a rumble, the heavens and earth shook. In a sense, this was a precious asset, which would certainly result in the growth of one or even a few high-quality spiritual herbs after a number of years. Yang Guan. As Xiao Miaoyan ran, she turned around just in time to watch the scene of Yang Guan being killed by Ling Han's sword, and could not help but speak harshly as her eyes narrowed to slits. You dare to kill the people from the immortal realm? You are doomed to die. When the ultimate elite of my sect comes, it will be the day of your punishment. Ling Han's expression remained cold as he picked up his sword and swiftly gave chase. Every 10,000 years, the 5 great sects use all living creatures from a single realm to concoct an alchemical pill. With the passing of a few millennia, how much blood debt has been owed? When I enter the immortal realm, I will have the 5 great sects uprooted, and have them settle the old debts incurred from the past few generations. Like a fish in a pond, you have no idea how big the immortal realm is, and how strong the immortals are. Xiao Miaoyan burned her life force and ran madly. As long as she escaped out of the Great Ling Empire, Ling Han wouldn't be so strong, losing the support of the power of the nation. At that time, she would fight back and attack if he still dared to give chase. With their fixing their gaze upon the lower realm, I can imagine that the 5 great sects are definitely the weakest sects in the immortal realm, and at most have only cultivators of the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han said calmly. What did you mean only Sun-Moon tier? Did you know how difficult it was to cross over to the immortal realm? Don't just look at the immortals only being divided into 5 big tiers. There was a whole world of difference between them, just like between the body refining tier and shattering void tier. Every tier was divided into 4 small tiers. The gap was extremely huge. Practically no one could ever match an opponent on a higher small tier than themselves. Only when the small tiers were further divided into early, middle, late, and peak stages would there appear a genius who could cross over a stage in a small tier. Taking all that into account, how strong could the Sun-Moon tier be? That was least a dozen levels more than Shattering Void tier. What big talk! Xiao Miaoyan naturally would not share any information regarding the immortal realm with Ling Han, although she didn't know that such information had been told to Ling Han by Yishuang Shuang. Saying anything would be useless now. If only the ultimate elite of the immortal realm came, and, for example, bound Ling Han and brought him into the immortal realm, then his so-called invincibility would become a super big joke. In the immortal realm, wouldn't killing a Shattering Void tier cultivator with battle prowess of 20 stars be not much different from an immortal raising his foot to step on an ant? If you disagree, then receive a single strike from my sword. Ling Han rushed to give chase. The other party had burned her life force, but he was reluctant to do the same even if using Thunderclap Ninth Heaven in addition to Demon Fairy Steps wasn't enough to surpass the other party's speed. However, this was the Great Ling Empire. Chapter 846. An Earth-Shattering Secret. All lands under the heavens were under the imperial authority. The world was mine. You were in my turf, yet wanted to come and go freely as you please? What a joke! Ling Han stretched out his hand and pressed, immediately drawing forth countless currents of air. They began slicing towards Xiao Miaoyan, akin to a series of divine swords. This was not his battle prowess, but rather the use of the power of nation. Theoretically speaking, as long as he was in command of the Great Ling Empire, he could barrage any corner within the territory via totems. But this would require a tremendously strong mental energy to support Idavan. If Ling Han's spirit had already advanced to the Shattering Void tier earlier than expected, it still could not reach infinite boundaries. But Xiao Miaoyan was just 10 li in front of him. If he could not control anything even at such short distance, then he was too useless, and the power of nation too meaningless. Pooh! Xiao Miaoyan immediately got hit. However, with just the power of nation, it was only 9 stars of Shattering Void tier, at most 10 stars strength, and that was not enough to pose a threat to her. It merely managed to rip a tiny bit of the hem of her clothes, though also compelled her to strike back some to counter the blows. After all, she did not have the physique of a monster. How would she dare to forcefully take the attacks head-on? As a result, her speed was naturally affected somewhat. Ling Han smiled, and raised his hands. Countless swords of air slashed over towards Xiao Miaoyan once more. He was also racing against time. The power of nation was naturally almost inexhaustible, but the strength channeled from the Black Tower could only last an hour. If he could not catch up to Xiao Miaoyan and kill her within this period of time, then he would have to give up the chase. With just the power of nation, he was not Xiao Miaoyan's match. After all, the gap in their actual level was practically too wide. Pu. Xiao Miaoyan brandished her sword, ceaselessly striking the swords of air that came shooting at her, and sent them flying. However, she was astonished to discover that Ling Han was drawing closer and closer. In desperation, she no longer bothered with these swords of air, and merely resorted to guarding her vital parts with origin power while fleeing for life with all her strength. Although this move of hers caused her to be heavily wounded, it effectively widened the distance between herself and Ling Han once more. With her speed, she did not even need half a day to reach the North Sea, a place which was beyond the reach of the Great Ling Empire's power of nation. Let's see who gets to kill whom then. Xiao Miaoyan's eyes were filled with killing intent. She had never been in this pitiful estate in the immortal realm, yet now in the lower realm, she actually had to burn her life force in order to flee for her life. Just when she was fuming, she saw a small silhouette appear before her. After that, a fist came crashing at her. Nio's flying tornado fist. Pang! This fist heavily landed on her face. Xiao Miaoyan had never expected that a person would suddenly appear in front of her. She was flying in the air, observing the surroundings on all 4 sides, and there had been no one anywhere in the front, which meant that the perpetrator of this sneak attack could only have closed in from the back. Hiss, was this a ghost? She was already burning her life force. Who could still catch up to her? A long stream of blood spilled from her nose, and her upper body was thrown backward and turned over. Taking a fist at such high speed, she lost all semblance of control over her body. The pain is killing Nio. Nio hastily shook her hand. Though her fist struck Xiao Miaoyan on the face, in actual fact, it was tantamount to hitting her own fist with an equal force, coupled with Xiao Miaoyan's high speed. The bones in her hand were all broken, and even the whole arm was hanging limply. Damn it! Xiao Miaoyan slowly recovered her senses. She then stared fixedly at Hu Niu with gushing killing intent. On this little girl was an extremely great treasure. Even the ultimate elites from the immortal realm would be tempted. I'll kill her, seize the treasure, and refine it myself. Xiao Miaoyan revealed a cruel expression that was filled with greed. This was really an opportunity delivered to her door. You think too much. At this time, a cold and indifferent voice drifted over from behind her, making every pore on her body tense up, while her forehead was instantly covered with sweat. She apprehensively turned around, and caught sight of Ling Han brandishing the Revere Life Sword. Don't kill me, I can become your woman, she screamed out. With my looks and talent in martial arts, I will definitely be of help to you. She sneered inwardly. This was of course just a stalling tactic, for she wanted to kill this man at all costs. In your dreams. Ling Han swung his sword, not stopping in the least. What? She was so beautiful, and had such amazing talent in martial arts, yet he actually would strike her. Xiao Miaoyan gave a loud cry, and her wings spread out behind her. She wanted to try her utmost to leap and dodge this fatal blow. Pooh! A sword swept past, and a person's head was sent flying. It still wore a shocked, disbelieving expression, spilling blood which shook the heaven and earth. The headless body collapsed on the ground. Not even twitching, she was directly killed on the spot. This was the #1 killing sword in all lands under the heavens. Ling Han put away his sword and said, How is it? Let me see if the injury is serious or not. The pain is killing Niu. Hu Niu pouted, absolutely upset. As Ling Han took out spiritual herbs to treat Hu Niu, with a smile he remarked, You are indeed reckless and daring. You even dared to block her. I was scared out of my wits by you just now. Don't be crushed to pieces. When a shattering void tier elite desperately on the run, moreover one that was burning her life force and possessed the battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier, collided with someone, perhaps even a shattering void tier elite would also be smashed to smithereens, let alone only a heaven tier cultivator. But Hu Niu was, after all, Hu Niuxia was unparalleled, and could not be measured by general rules. This wretched woman also wanted to be Ling Han's woman. Niu does not agree. Hu Niu used her other hand to grab Ling Han. Ling Han is Niu's. She expressed an intense desire to monopolize him, yet there were traces of anxiety in the depths of her eyes. Ling Han gave out a hearty laugh. This little girl really did not change all this while. When she was 5 she was like that, and at 10 she was also like that. However, the little girl has grown up, and now could be called a young maiden, possessing a slight trace of femininity. Niu wants to eat a lot of delicious food to restore Niu's body. Hu Niu stretched out her hand to ask Ling Han for food. He nodded his head. He first searched Xiao Miaoyan's body, yet could not find her spatial spirit tool, which contradicted her identity. Perhaps her descent from the immortal realm would destroy the spatial spirit tool? Otherwise, one could take along a great number of treasures, and it would not be every person from their team only bringing along a drop of immortal blood. Ling Han and Hu Niu entered the Black Tower. He first prepared the food for the little lady, letting her eat and drink to her heart's content and forget about the pain from her broken arm. Afterwards, Ling Han grabbed the Azura Demon Emperor. Within the Black Tower, Ling Han was a god. The Azura Demon Emperor trembled had already been taught a lesson by Small Tower once. Now, he no longer had a temper, and was well behaved like a grandson. Though similarly referred to as Emperor, his aura and the aura of the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire were way too far apart. I'll tell you an earth-shattering secret. Don't kill me. The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly shouted out right away as soon as he saw Ling Han. Earlier on, Small Tower had already proved that his life was incomparably fragile here. He could even refine the Chaos Source Rock. What more a wisp of demonic chi like him? Ling Han sat cross-legged with one foot poised in the air. He naturally had no face to give this kind of coward who cared for naught but his own life. If the other party had been unyielding unto death, at least that could garner his respect. In a displeased tone he said, Who told you that you could use some secret to avoid having to die? This secret you will definitely be interested in, the Azura Demon Emperor hastily shouted. It relates to the entire lower realm. Chapter 847. Origin of the Lower Realm. Please do enlighten me, Ling Han spoke with a disdainful air of indifference. You must first swear not to kill me. The Azura Demon Emperor stated his condition. Ling Han's eyes widened as he glared fixedly at the Azura Demon Emperor, and said, Forget it, I'm not interested anymore. Ling Han then raised his palm, about to strike. Don't, we can talk about this civilly, there's no need to be so fierce. The Azura Demon Emperor hastily conceded as he added, I can divulge some secrets first. Speak. The Azura Demon Emperor deliberated over his response, and gave a slight cough before revealing, The lower realm is a small world. What the hell? Wasn't this crap? Why else would it ever be targeted by the 5 sects of the immortal realm were it not for it being a small world? Spouting nonsense will only hasten your death. What more ridiculing me? Ling Han said coldly. This time the Azura Demon Emperor replied fearlessly, What if I tell you that the lower realm was still a part of the immortal realm until 3 to 4 million years ago? What? This piece of news finally managed to evoke a startled reaction from Ling Han. What was the meaning of this? The lower realm was originally part of the immortal realm. Then how did it break off from the immortal realm and turn into a small world? With a pensive expression, Ling Han looked at the Azura Demon Emperor as he queried, You did not intentionally cook up this story just so that you could save your life, did you? It was too ridiculous. I can swear to the heavens that what I have said is all true. The Azura Demon Emperor swiftly made an oath. Ling Han thought for a moment then said, Fine, you'll tell me everything that you know from start to finish clearly and plainly, without leaving anything out. If this news is true, it's not like I cannot spare you. Thank you, young Master Han. Thank you, young Master Han. The Azura Demon Emperor promptly responded, his eagerness to bootlick written all over his face. Now that he was simply a piece of black fog, he could make changes unendingly, and change his expression as he wished. Speak then. Ling Han gestured with his hand. How could this bastard be worthy to be dubbed an emperor? He was practically a disgrace to the word. Yes. The Azura Demon Emperor appeared to be organizing his thoughts as he started speaking. The lower realm has long been in the immortal realm, but all of a sudden, it vanished. This piqued the curiosity of quite a number of big shots in our netherworld and in the immortal realm, and they began investigating. In the end, the conclusion was that this piece of land must have separated from the immortal realm, and has transformed into a small world. Out of curiosity, the ultimate elites reinvestigated the lower realm once again, yet discovered an even more shocking matter, which was that in fact, the lower realm was a small world as early as at least 10 million years ago, and entered into the immortal realm through the method of splitting open the skies. This was something that had never occurred. A small world showing up by way of splitting open the skies actually detached again from the immortal realm, then transformed into a small world anew. The ultimate elites all deduced that valuable treasures must have emerged in the lower realm, hence such a change. As a result, the ultimate elites were all searching for this lower realm which has reverted to a small world, wanting to know what kind of rare treasures have actually come into being on it, as well as wanting to take the opportunity to seize it. But there are really too many small worlds. Moreover, it is called the lower realm here, however when it was in the immortal realm previously, it was not named as such. Thus, nobody knew that this small world that is controlled by such small and weak power as the 5 sects was actually the former immortal land that the ultimate elites expended such extensive resources to search for. Motioning with his hand, Ling Han then asked, Since the lower realm was not referred to with such a name previously, then how did you know that this is actually that piece of land that has separated from the immortal realm all those years ago? That is very simple. The reason why I would come here was precisely because I was ordered to come to carry out investigation, verifying if the small world is actually that which the ultimate elites are targeting. It's just that I was suppressed as soon as I arrived. The Azura Demon Emperor was evidently somewhat disheartened. Then how did you verify this? At last Ling Han was showing interest. Given that this piece of land has appeared in the immortal realm before, it would inevitably have acquired the aura of the immortal realm. Although its traces has been dealt with very thoroughly, I still managed to catch a whiff of the immortal realm's aura emanating from within the land's core. The Azura Demon Emperor then proudly boasted, It's not that I want to brag, but only our group of talented individuals possess this kind of ability. Otherwise, I would not have been assigned to come here. Ling Han pondered for a while, then queried. The Netherworld delegated numerous beings similar to you with the task to search various small worlds. Young Master Han, you are really clever, absolutely spot on. The Azura Demon Emperor did not hesitate to curry favor. After all, his little life was now absolutely in Ling Han's hands. Ling Han could not help being engrossed in his thoughts. If the lower realm had originally been a small world, had split open the skies once before, and yet degenerated into a small world due to certain unfathomable reasons later, then that was all certainly too astounding. Even the ultimate elites from the immortal realm and the netherworld were all astir, proving that even they were not capable of such a feat, which was why it aroused their interest. It even succeeded in attracting the attention of the originally unrelated netherworld, prompting them to dispatch a large number of individuals to enter the small world to conduct the search. He could not stop his heartbeat from accelerating. Could it be that the thing that these ultimate elites were searching for was actually the Black Tower? Small Tower kept on saying that if it were to use its full strength, it was capable of destroying the lower realm, but would also attract the true ultimate elites to make a move to seize it at the same time. As such, even if it had great impressive power, it could not put it to good use, but rather needed to first restore itself. In that way, it could then suppress its aura when it actually did exert its strength, not letting the ultimate elites from the immortal realm sense it. Ling Han took a deep breath. If it could let a small world ascend into the immortal realm by splitting open the skies and turn back into a small world again, what kind of impressive ability could that be? Black Tower. What kind of background could it actually have? The indestructible Heaven Scroll could let his physique achieve the toughness of a rare metal a level higher than his tier, and this was still the strength of the first layer of the cultivation technique. In that case, how high would the strength of the second and third layer of cultivation techniques be? Who created the Black Tower? How did they fall into decline? As strong as the Black Tower was, it was even seriously damaged. Who could have done it? Ling Han only felt that the more he knew, the more unanswered questions there were. He shook his head, and kept all of this at the bottom of his here. They could slowly examine it in the future after he entered into the immortal realm. For example, he'd check who was the lead in splitting open the skies the last time. Also, the mountain and river axe would not actually be forged by that person, would it? Young Master Han, can I go now? The Azura Demon Emperor asked as a crude smile spread over his face. Ling Han also smiled, and replied, What do you think? A look of disappointment crossed the Azura Demon Emperor's face. He also knew that this secret was too serious, so Ling Han would absolutely not allow him to tell anybody else. It seemed that he was likely to be held captive here for life. The surroundings here were quite nice, and the place was also big. Furthermore, there were spiritual herbs all over the place, though he did not need spiritual herbs. However, the people were really too scarce here, making him feel very unaccustomed to it. You just stay here. If your behavior is good, I can let you out to catch a breath of fresh air, Ling Han said. When he really advanced to the Shattering Void tier would be the time he let out the Azura Demon Emperor, and could manipulate him as he wished then. Hunyo's injuries healed very swiftly. This little girl was also a weird one. Now her body had another additional godly egg, so who knew what kind of changes would happen to her? We'll go back first. Ling Han and Hunyo got out from the Black Tower, and returned to the imperial capital. This time, Xiao Miaoyan, Yang Guan, and the Azura Demon Emperor all had been dealt with already, so the only powerful elite left at large was an 18-eyed corpse king of the Thousand Corpse sect. So much easier to deal with. Chapter 848. Return to the Sea Race. After this battle, the hearts of the people in the Great Ling Empire had become more united. The only issue was that Ling Han's body could only bear the power of 10 stars of Shattering Void tier. Hence, there wasn't much increase in his power. His cultivation had been increasing all this while, but compared to the power of 10 stars of Shattering Void tier, it was still negligible. Only stepping into the Shattering Void tier would bring about a qualitative transformation in his power. Without realizing it, another few months had passed. Ling Han had already reached the 9th layer of the Heaven tier, and was beginning to switch to cultivating the Extreme Yang technique. Although there wasn't any bottleneck, to begin cultivating a new technique still needed to be done cumulatively. He reckoned that breaking through to the Shattering Void tier would take about a year's time. This was already quite amazing. One had to know that he was only 21 years old. In reality, he had only just recently stepped into his adult years. If compared to his relative age, it was only later by 1 or 2 years. But it was important to know that he was actually in the lower realm. Could the lower realm compare with the immortal realm? Otherwise, how could it be possible that the immortal realm would be encroaching into the lower realm? Rather, it would be the lower realm encroaching into the immortal realm. Given that the period of 1 year previously agreed upon with the sea race was up, Ling Han and Helian Sun Shui packed up with the intention of making a trip to the North Sea. Firstly, it was to take a look at their son. Secondly, it was to visit Helian Tianyun to see what kind of new accomplishments he had. Ling Dongxing wanted to go together with Helian Sun Shui to see his grandson. That being the case, Ling Han brought both of them. Anyway, the Black Tower was so big that it could accommodate them even if there were more people. Hunyo naturally couldn't be left behind. The little girl was becoming more feminine, and her chest was beginning to show some slight undulation. Sometimes, she would learn to act coquettish like Zhu Xian air, which Ling Han found to be quite hilarious. Rabbit said that he had not been to the sea, and was taken along as well. Rock Spirit had already been back since long ago. This time, it had also set out with them on the trip, responsible for being Hunyo's mount. It had been continuously receiving the essence of Earth within Black Tower, and had crossed over the last step to reach the Shattering Void tier in advance of the others. This was unimaginable in the past. From the Flower Blossom to Shattering Void tier, how many spirit stones did one need to absorb? Lord Rock is indeed smart, and followed the right owner. It thought, a simple-minded expression on its face. Despite being a Shattering Void tier elite, it was as docile as a dog in front of Hunyo. Everyone set out, heading towards the sea. Before entering the North region, Ling Han went to take a look at the ancient mining area. The black mist there was like a vast ocean, which had completely swallowed up the original capital of Fire Country. This was a hidden danger. Ling Han thought that the first thing he would do after stepping into the Shattering Void tier would be to raise this place. They entered the sea, and rushed to Dome Cloud Island. The journey was very smooth all the way, and it took them just 4 days to reach the destination. It was also because the strength of both Ling Han and Hunyo had progressed to another level, and thus their speed was naturally faster. Who's there? Guards soaring through the sky stopped Ling Han and the others. 7th Princess. Consort. When they saw the appearance of Ling Han and the others, they became respectful, and made their salutations. Helian Sun Shui waved her hand, and said, "No need to stand on ceremony, where is the king?" Currently inside the palace. Helian Sun Shui naturally didn't need them to lead the way. As she missed her son dearly, she impatiently flew all the way. The moment she entered the royal palace, she only saw that Helian Rong was holding a little boy and playing with him in full eagerness. "Call grandfather. Call grandfather. Big one. Big one." The little boy grabbed the ear of Helian Rong, and clapped his hands. "It's grandfather, not big one," Helian Rong was saying frantically. This little kid was already able to talk for a few months now, but only engrossed in calling him big one it really made him feel extremely anxious. Both Ling Han and Helian Sun Shui flew down, which made Helian Rong jump in fright. Currently, his mind was completely focused on Ling Jian Shui, putting all his hope on the other party to call him grandfather. Who would have thought that Ling Han and the others would suddenly appear? "Father! Mother!" Ling Jian Shui suddenly shouted, and scampered over to them. "Pooh!" Helian Rong suddenly spewed out a mouthful of blood. He had already lost count of how many times he had taught the little rascal who would only go calling him big one, instead of addressing him as grandfather. He'd never thought that when Ling Han and Helian Sun Shui arrived, the little rascal would actually address them properly. Damn it! Helian Sun Shui was happy yet regretful. She wasn't able to teach her son call them mother and father. It was her son who had learned it himself. She hugged her son and said, "Good son, mother will no longer be apart from you." She no longer cared about anything. Her only thought was not to be separated from her son. "Ha ha ha, damn brat. You are finally here." Helian Tianyun also flew in. In the past 1 year, he had indeed stepped into the heaven tier. His dragons might have gotten somewhat stronger, though the change wasn't too drastic. After all, he had originally reached his peak state, and improvement would thus naturally be limited. Although Ling Han also missed his son very much, he was more pleased to see the change in his son. The little boy had yet to reach 2 years old, but his brute force had already reached the peak of the spiritual pedestal tier. His progress was truly amazing. "What is the current situation of the 4 Cs?" he asked, naturally taking care of serious matters first. Helian Tianyun very proudly puffed up his chest and said, "Now, the 4 Cs are all under the control of this lord. More than half of the sea race of the Central Sea have also sworn allegiance to this lord. You've come at just the right time. I intend to attack the Sea Emperor in a few days' time. Come and join in the fun." Dragon's might really came in handy. With so many shattering void tier cultivators among the sea race, most have already been conquered by a little boy who was presently still in the heaven tier. Ling Han smiled and said, "Okay, it would be good to observe and gain knowledge firsthand." Under the true dragon's might of Helian Tianyun, most of the sea race had chosen to stand under his banner. However, the imperial family was naturally unwilling to lay down their weapons and surrender. They even had the backing of the immortal realm, and thus would naturally fight him to the end. However, although there were many elites among the imperial family, it wouldn't be more than the numbers of all the 4 Cs. This obstacle was as good as removed. After 3 days of preparation, the army was dispatched. There were elites continuously joining the army. The number of Shattering Void tier cultivators was more than 300. This was because some of the Shattering Void tier cultivators actually had to stand guard and oversee their clans. Otherwise, bringing together 400 of them wouldn't be an issue at all. The ancestral homes of the royal clans of the 4 Cs were all on the island. The only exception was the imperial family. Their ancestral land was in the deep sea, within a strait, surrounded by super-large sea beasts. Although they had not developed intelligence and had zero cultivation knowledge, with their extremely formidable physique and brute force, their battle prowess had reached 15 stars. They were the natural guardians of the imperial family, the most powerful guardians that could tear to pieces any shattering void tier cultivators who firmly charged forward. However, in front of Helian Tianyun, these sea beasts were completely powerless. The reason the imperial family could use them as guards was because these sea beasts would be affected by dragon's might. Such dragon's might had to be extremely pure. The level of might such as Helian Rong's wouldn't have any effect at all. But, who was Helian Tianyun? He was the alternative dragon from millennia ago, and had even cultivated a true dragon's fang. Now that he had obtained a second lifetime through the true dragon's fang, his dragon's might was even stronger than in his last life. Therefore, with a single thought of his, these sea beasts would retreat one after another. In front, there was an extremely huge strait. "How dare you offend the imperial family? Do you all know your crime?" A cold voice was heard from within the strait. Chapter 849. Miscalculation. The sound lifted the stream, and emitted powerful dragon's might, making everyone's body tremble and almost fall to their knees. To the sea race, bloodline was extremely important. It was similar to how a human spiritual infant tier elite could write a law decree to suppress spiritual pedestal tier warriors to the point where they couldn't move. Fortunately, the kings among martial artists could still resist such coercive pressure. However, amongst the sea race, superior bloodline overpowered all. Previously, Helian Tianyun was only in the gushing spring tier, yet Helian Rong and Wenren Jie were both suppressed to the point of kneeling immediately, and it was the same now. Helian Tianyun snorted, and walked in front with his hands behind his back. He was clearly a little kid, but his expression was full of arrogance of an old expert. He said, "This lord is here, hurry up and have Ao Xingbo get the hell out here to greet me." "Boy, how dare you be disrespectful to the Sea Emperor?" that voice said coldly. "Haha, don't pull this useless nonsense. The sea race is a place where bloodline is looked upon. This lord's ancestral blood is pure. Who dares not to respect this lord?" Helian Tianyun sneered. "Hee, you also know that the sea race is a place where bloodline is stressed?" With a sneer, 100 or so people walked out from the strait. These people all wore dragon robes, and emitted powerful presences. They were all in the Shattering Void tier, and with true dragon's blood that was extremely pure, far surpassing Helian Rong, Xian Yutong, and the like. It wasn't without reason that Ao family could unite the 4 Cs. Get the hell over here and greet this lord, will you? Helian Tianyu said loftily. Although it was an expedition this time, it was basically impossible for a battle to take place. Once his dragon might was unleashed, it would be a complete one-sided crush. So, he was just going through the motions. He activated his dragon's might, and attacked at AO family's side. Wang, as the dragon's might activated, many people in the AO family were like the Four Seas royal family previously, shivering and almost kneeling. Helian Tianyun walked on airs. He turned around and said to Ling Jianshui, "Disciple, see that? This lord's just that kick-ass." Humph. With a sneer, a youngster walked out, unaffected by Helian Tianyun's dragon's might. He said indifferently, "You're just a fake dragon, I'm the true dragon." Hong. He also spread his dragon's might. A presence no inferior to Helian Tianyun swept by, and instantly, the Four Seas royal families all lost their battle power. Ling Han frowned, and directly put Helian Sun Shui into the Black Tower. Although her blood was very pure, it was far from reaching the heights of Helian Tianyun, and she couldn't even stand firmly now. Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchong obviously entered the Black Tower after entering the sea region. What? Helian Tianyun was shocked. This youngster was actually unaffected by his dragon's might, and emitted a dragon's might no inferior to his. How could that be? He cultivated to the height of an alternative dragon countless years ago, and at last was reborn through a tooth of a true dragon. In terms of dragon's might alone, at least in the vast lands, there was no dragon race that could match him. Where did someone who had the power of bloodline that could rival him come from? From the immortal realm? Ling Han interrupted. Since the five sects could send people down, why couldn't the AO family? Smart, that youngster said with a smile. He looked handsome and even had a heroic charm. 2 dragon horns grew on top of his head, emitting an ancient and noble presence. Horns of a true dragon. Helian Tianyun was stern. He was nourished and reborn through the tooth of a true dragon, and was obviously extremely sensitive to a true dragon's presence. No wonder the opponent could oppose him, so it turned out that it was a true dragon's descendant from the immortal realm. Ling Han was moved within horns of a true dragon? Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wanted him to gather 4 divine items, and wasn't one of them true dragon's horns? TSK, 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 if I cut off and throw them to that guy, will I be able to get a mystical power in return? Hee hee, truly the frog at the bottom of a well. The young man shook his head, his expression full of disdain. Beneath the divine level, how is it possible to reach a true dragon's level? Only those who achieve the Genesis tier are qualified to be called true dragons. Pah! Ling Han's mouth instantly twitched. A dragon had to be in the Genesis tier to be called a true dragon? In a similar fashion, a phoenix had to be in the Genesis tier to be called a true phoenix? Then how would he get true dragon's horn and heavenly phoenix feathers? If he really could obtain it, then he would definitely be at the cultivation of the Genesis tier. This would mean he was the top elite in the divine realm, so would he still need to learn Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's mystical power? H*T. No wonder this guy wasn't willing to see people with his real face. Was he afraid that he'd be cursed? Helian Tianyun was also somewhat shocked, and even more so couldn't accept it at the moment. He thought his blood was already extremely pure, and could completely be seen as a true dragon. He sneered, "Don't spread rumors to deceive people. Where's the brat? Hurry up and pay respects to this lord." He only looked 5 to 6 years old, yet called the other person a brat, not knowing shame. "I'm called Ao Jian." The young man's expression was calm, appearing unhurried. In terms of demeanor alone, Helian Tianyun, who had already lived one lifetime, was really hard to rival. The sea race measures superiority with bloodline. Now the degree your and my bloodline's purity is the same, so we'll determine the winner through strength. Helian Tianyun looked towards Ling Han, somewhat dumbfounded. Those words obviously made sense. The sea race obviously first compared bloodline, but what if bloodline purity was about the same? Then they'd compare strength. Just like Helian Rong and Wunren Jithier bloodlines had somewhat of a gap between them, but couldn't form an overwhelming advantage, so fighting was the way. But the problem was, this Ao Jian. He was fucking shattering void tier elite. Fight for what? If the battle started, Helian Tianyun would definitely die. Ling Han couldn't help but admit that they took the wrong path on this turn, underestimating the immortal realm. He'd thought that it would be smooth like with the 5 sections. It wouldn't matter if the immortal realm's people came geniuses with battle prowess of shattering void tier 20 stars were also extremely rare, but they would still be swept away by Ma Duobao. Although Helian Tianyun's tier dropped, his bloodline was noble, and he proved it constantly along the way, but now, all was going to be reversed. If Helian Tianyu died in a battle, the sea race would obviously return under the control of the AO family. It would be extremely effortless, a simple fight. Shattering Void Tier versus Heaven Tier, was there any suspense? The 5 sects could send Shattering Void Tier 18 stars geniuses. Why couldn't the AO family do it? Fuck. Ling Han immediately shook his head at Helian Tianyun. No matter whether it was him or Helian Tianyun, what the two of them lacked the most was time. As long as they were given 2 to 3 years' time, no, possibly 1 year, they would be able to become the strongest existences in the world, unafraid of anyone. They definitely couldn't start a war now. Fighting would only lead to death. Helian Tianyu nodded at Ling Han, expressing his agreement with Ling Han's view. Ling Han transmitted a few words with the divine sense to Helian Rong, then stored the rabbit, rock spirit, and Hunyo into the Black Tower, and then grabbed Helian Tianyun, taking to his heels. Of course he'd run. If not run, was he going to stay for tea? Everyone was taken aback. Why would he run all of a sudden? Helian Rong received Ling Han's voice transmission, and reacted the fastest. He immediately said, "Fake true dragon, don't run." However, he was suppressed by Ao Gen's dragon's might and unable to give chase at all, and could only shout for show. The 4 Seas royal families finally reacted, and joined the group of denouncers. It couldn't be helped, the sea race decided everything with bloodline, so they could only resolutely indicate their position so as to avoid the imperial family settling accounts afterwards. This was also why Ling Han had Helian Rong denounce him. Helian Rong could run, but the Helian family couldn't. Chapter 850. Ancient Mineshaft sends troops out. Ling Han and Helian Tianyun ran. As long as they survived, there'd be a time in the future when they fought back, or else all would be for naught. They might not look old right now, but they'd both lived one life already. Would they still let emotions sway their decisions? That would be stupid. You want to run? Ao Gen immediately began his pursuit. Only he was qualified to chase, because the other 7, the imperial family, would be suppressed by Helian Tianyun's dragon's might, chasing for nothing. He was a genius of Immortal Realm's dragon race, with the blood of true dragon flowing in his veins, and currently already had Shattering Void 19 stars of battle prowess, being only 1 star away from the extreme battle prowess. Thus, he was extremely conceited. Stop! Ao Gen constantly used spells and controlled the stream to ram it towards Ling Han and Helian Tianyun. He was a descendant of a true dragon, and could inherently control water. These were waves drawn by a Shattering Void tier elite. Ling Han and Helian Tianyun only had the cultivation of the Heaven tier, so how could they block them? Pang, 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 they were slapped by the waves, shocked and numb all over. Fortunately, one of them had a physique of 10th tier rare metal, while the other was only slightly inferior, not that far off, or else the waves alone could shatter them into pieces. However, Ao Gen seized the chance to catch up with them. *T, now that's a great loss. Ling Han finally unleashed the instant teleportation talisman. This time, he wasn't just doing it for show, but truly planning on using it. Otherwise, being trapped and unable to escape from the sea area, he would still have to use the instant teleportation talisman in the end. Instant teleportation talisman? Catching his gaze, Ao Gen sped up in a rush, trying to stop them from leaving. See you next time, little brat. At that time, this lord will definitely kill you. Helian Tianyun said fiercely. A dignified alternative dragon like him was hunted down and had to flee helter-skelter. Such a thing couldn't be stomached. Shua, Ao Gen extended his hand and thrust a long spear, but when the spear point landed, only a vacuum layer was created. Ling Han and Helian Tianyun already disappeared without a trace. Damn it! His gaze shone with a chilling glare, appearing very regretful. Honestly, he wouldn't chase them onto land, because he'd already heard that there was an extremely powerful human, who was also a born-killing formation there, and on top of power of the nation's blessing, his battle prowess broke through 20 stars. He was afraid he'd die there. No Wei was a dignified true dragon's descendant with boundless prospects, and couldn't possibly endanger himself in this lowly, small world. The only purpose he had here was to ensure smooth creation of the realm pill. Wretch! Damn it! How could they have an instant teleportation talisman, something extremely rare even in the divine realm? Xiao with a flash, Ling Han and Helian Tianyun already appeared at sea level. Where's this? Ling Han gazed into the distance.
Helian Tianyun sniffed and then said, "As far as this lord can tell, it should be the West Sea."
Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a strange expression and said, "You can smell that out?" "No such asterisk T, the waters of the 4 seas are all different. How can this lord not smell it?" Helian Tianyun snorted, appearing very proud, and then said strangely, "Brat, how come you have an instant teleportation talisman? Although this thing's well known, even this lord has never obtained it before." Ling Han came to a realization, connecting it with that big news that Azura Demon Emperor had revealed. If the vast lands originally stayed in the immortal realm before, then it wasn't unacceptable that some divine-level things appeared here. They could have been dug from a grave by Ma Duo Bao. This fatty was really a pretty good person to have given him such a precious thing. "Someone gifted it to me," Ling Han said without thought. "Gifting even such a precious thing?" Helian Tianyun was shocked. "Hurry, hurry, hurry. Who's that person? Introduce him to this lord. This lord doesn't mind becoming good friends with him." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, "You and him really are somewhat alike in some ways." He told Helian Tianyun about Ma Duo Bao while returning to land. Since they were in the West Sea, they would obviously first arrive at the West region, then turn towards the North region to return to the imperial capital. With their pace on foot, they finally left the ocean area after 7 days, stepping on land. The people in the Black Tower also knew the course of the matter. Except for Hu Niu running out, the other people still stayed inside to accommodate fast pace of the journey. However, Ling Han would sometimes take his son out and hold him, nourishing the bond between father and son. The West region was now also Great Ling Empire's territory, with the totem's duplicate silhouette, and Ling Han only had to connect to it to be able to find out about the movements of the Great Ling Empire. Originally, he just randomly thought of it and thus connected to the totem. But after receiving some news, he immediately revealed a shocked expression. The things buried underneath the former Fire Country's mine shaft finally came out. Through the totem silhouette, he saw blurry shadows of humanoid creatures enveloped in black current that were extremely powerful, besieging towns and strongholds in their path. With every city they conquered, they refined everyone in the city into the walking dead, which were also bound by black current, becoming their subordinates, though their strength was average. Fortunately, refining one city took a considerable amount of time. They still hadn't completely seized the desolate north, so it wouldn't be any time soon that they'd pass through the Fallen Moon Gorge and enter North Region's large territory. "What's the matter?" Helian Tianyun asked casually. Once Ling Han spoke of the situation, Helian Tianyun also frowned. It just had to be at this time. If the two of them were given time, they'd be the strongest elites with battle prowess of shattering void tier 20 stars in the future, but the heavens seemed to deliberately make things difficult for them, not even giving them 1 year, and setting up difficult problems for them one after another. Ling Han immediately made a decision to let the rock spirit make a trip to Purple Moon Emperor's court to get reinforcements while he immediately charged back. Whether it was out of responsibility or for himself, he had to stop those people from the ancient mine shaft. They buried and remade themselves with the Yin Qi in the ground, turning from a living person to one of the underworld, even trying to turn this small world into part of the underworld. When the time came to split open the skies, they'd be ascending into the underworld. It definitely couldn't happen. With power of the nation's blessing, Ling Han's power instantly skyrocketed to shattering void tier 9 stars. Although the desolate north was small, after falling into enemy hands, it still affected the power of the nation, or else he should boast the power of shattering void tier 10 stars now. The Thunderclap 9th Heaven and Fairy Demon Steps were activated by him at the same time, so his speed was swift as he was flying rapidly in the direction of the Fallen Moon Gorge. On the other side, he issued orders through the totem, having all elites gather at the Fallen Moon Gorge to fight the people of the underworld. After 3 days, he arrived at the Fallen Moon Gorge. At this time, the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing also arrived with large amounts of experts, and stopped the large army outside the gorge. Yi Shuang was also requested to come, and was now sitting leisurely on the side, out of tune with everyone else. Your Majesty. Seeing Ling Han, everyone knelt down to pay their respects. Ling Han waved his hand, having everyone stand up, and then said, "Big brother, how's the situation?" The desolate north already fell into enemy hands, and the totem obviously also lost its use as his eyes and ears. He no longer knew what happened inside.
According to what I saw the few times I scouted the gorge, the enemy already rallied their forces again, and will come out the gorge in a few days, the Rain Emperor said with a frown.
He'd seen the destruction those things had caused, and as Rain Country's former ruler, he obviously utterly detested it. Report.
A scout suddenly charged in, knelt down and said, "There is movement within the gorge."
Chapter 851. Demon Servants. They came so quickly. Long, chaotic heavy footsteps sounded within the gorge. Judging from this point alone, it was a motley crew. Ling Han and the others immediately came out of their tents, and looked towards the gorge. Hundreds of humanoid beings could be seen at the forefront, but their entire bodies was enveloped in a black current, and their countenance couldn't be seen at all. Even their height and sex were indistinguishable. Behind them was a dense crowd of people, who clearly used to be normal people, but were now bound by black demonic chi, making their appearance terrifying. They were emitting an intense atmosphere of bloodlust. They were converted into the underworld's low-level demon servants. Yi Shuang started to talk. Somewhat similar to corpse soldiers, unaware of pain, and unafraid of death, but their physiques are far inferior. However, they still maintain considerable intelligence, and aren't necessarily easier to kill compared to corpse soldiers of the same level.
Then what about those people in front?
Ling Han asked. Yi Shuang nodded, and said, "They can be counted as high-level demon servants." Shattering Void Tier 1s are only high-level demon servants? Ling Han was shocked. Yi Shuang rolled her eyes at him, and said, "The divine beings are divided into 5 levels, and every large level is subdivided into 4 small levels. Even small levels are almost insurmountable, equivalent to 20 levels. These guys haven't even advanced to the divine level. Could they even be called demon generals or demon kings?" That made sense. Judging from the level of the vast lands, these high-level demon servants were already peak-stage existences, but in the underworld, they weren't even close to the edge of being an expert. Resisting against the underworld is every divine being's responsibility, and this lady is no exception. Yi Shuang's expression was stern. "Today, this lady will fight alongside you. These demon servants must be eliminated."
Ha, I didn't come late, did I?
With a laughter, a lonely man with a lanky figure descended from the sky, holding a wine gourd in hand, stubble all over his face. He looked extremely old.
"Big brother."
Ling Han was pleasantly surprised, and immediately went to greet him. It was Feng Peyun. They hadn't seen each other for a few years, and Feng Peyun had already advanced from Shattering Void Tier 3rd layer to the 5th layer. Such an improvement was truly great. Presumably, it should be because he cultivated out Sword Heart Illumination, which could cut the demons within his heart, so his improvement in tier became relatively easier. This was definitely a helping hand. Although Feng Peyun hadn't reached Shattering Void Tier's 9th layer, Sword Heart Illumination should have extremely great destructive power towards these demons. "Younger brother, long time no see. Your cultivation's improvement speed truly astonishes me." Feng Peyun laughed loudly. At the time they met, Ling Han was only at the Flower Blossom tier, and now, he was about to cross into the Shattering Void tier. "Big brother, you can come under my empire temporarily, and I'll bestow you with the title of a king, allowing you to utilize the power of the nation to improve battle prowess," Ling Han said with a smile. "Okay." Feng Peyun agreed with a smile. Originally, with his tier and status, he obviously wouldn't deign join under someone as some king, but to resist against the underworld's invasion now, he was obviously able to distinguish which was the more important between the great cause and his reputation. Besides, it wasn't anything bad to work for his younger brother. Ling Han actuated the totem and said,
This emperor now bestows big brother Feng Peyun with the title of this court's Feng Yun King, and hereby proclaims it to the nation. Hong, the totem instantly operated, transmitting this appointment to every corner of Great Ling Empire immediately. Above the imperial city, a golden name was added onto the black tower totem's body. Feng Yun King, Feng Peyun. This represented Great Ling Empire's official conferment. He could accept the mental power of millions of subjects through the totem and operate the power of the nation. Now, Great Ling Empire had a total of 3 kings: the Rain Emperor, Mu Rongqing, and Feng Poyan, who was just conferred his title. Feng Poyan immediately operated the power of the nation, and couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. He said, "My power actually increased to the level of Shattering Void Tier 11 stars. Unfortunately, my physique isn't tough enough, or else it could still increase a little bit more." Under the blessing of the power of the nation, his power increased by 4 stars, but the increase of his actual battle prowess should be more than that. "Brat, give this lady the title of a king," Yi Shuang said. Although she was a divine being, suppressed by the realm's power, and her tier dropped straight to the Shattering Void Tier's 9th layer, it didn't mean that her power couldn't reach Shattering Void Tier 20 stars. Thus, the power of the nation would also have an addition effect on her. Ling Han nodded, and conferred Yi Shuang the title Wu Shuang King through the totem. This lady's battle prowess only increased by 3 stars? Yi Shuang couldn't help but be gloomy. It couldn't be helped. The stronger one's strength, the weaker the power of the nation's blessing. Unless she was the country's master, who could receive infinite power blessing so long as the body could withstand it and the mental power of the subjects was strong enough. However, it's still enough to suppress that alluring woman. The alluring woman obviously meant the Lunar King, whom she constantly had in mind. It was obvious just how great of a shock Lunar King's charm brought her at the time. "Human, hurry up and surrender. This king can grant you guys eternal life." In the gorge on the opposite side, those high-level demon servants already walked out. 100 Shattering Void Tier elites stood there, emitting terrifying presence, even seeming to shake down the firmament. "A mere demon servant dares to boast shamelessly," Ling Han sneered. "Outrageous, how dare you speak to this king in this way?" A high-level demon servant whose figure was the tallest shouted, raising his hand and spreading out a silver ray of light, which immediately enlarged infinitely, turning into a great silver spider the size of a mountain. This great spider moved its 8 legs that were like heavenly axes, and looked down at all living creatures with a contemptuous look. Reaching the tier it was at, changing its own body was obviously a piece of cake. "Kill!" That high-level demon servant that claimed itself to be the king pointed at Ling Han. The great silver spider immediately sprung with its 8 feet, and charged towards Ling Han. "Haha, I'll be your opponent." Feng Peyun laughed loudly, brandishing his sword and charging out. The fact that his tier could increase so fast also had to do with this great spider, which was continuously impelling him to get stronger. Now, with the blessing of the power of the nation, Feng Peyun was obviously going to vigorously fight a great battle. Pang! The 2 elites exchanged blows, and instantly fought from the ground to the sky. Their fight was extremely intense. Ling Han took a glance, and discovered that Feng Peyun's current battle prowess wasn't inferior to the great silver spider's, instantly feeling relieved. He said indifferently, "I am Great Ling Empire's Emperor Ling Han. Who are you people? State your names." The king of demon servants sneered. "A mere heaven-tier warrior dares to claim kingship. What a gargantuan joke. This king already abandoned his previous name. You people can call this king Demon King San Mi." Yi Shuang couldn't help but burst into laughter, and said, "A mere demon servant dares to claim to be a demon king? How shameless do you have to be? Come, fight this lady 300 rounds and see if this lady won't tear apart your thick face." "Are you seeking your own death?" The king of demon servants sneered, reaching out its hand to snatch Yi Shuang. "This lady isn't wanton. Don't touch her with your dirty hand." Yi Shuang swatted with her hand, and the hand of the king of demon servants was instantly sent flying. The king of demon servants smiled grimly, waved its large hand bound by demonic chi, and said, "Kill them all." The large army instantly charged towards Great Ling Empire's troops. Chapter 852. Reinforcements. Kill. Ling Han also brandished the Revere Life Sword. Shattering Void Tier 10 stars of power was enough to completely activate this sword, and he also threw out the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. Every bit of Shattering Void Tier power was precious right now. The great battle immediately ensued. At first contact, Great Ling Empire was at a disadvantage, an absolute disadvantage. On the Demon Servant side, there were too many Shattering Void Tier elites, and the King of Demon Servants even reached Shattering Void Tier 19 stars of battle prowess, a notch stronger than Yi Shuang, instantly making her unable to cope with him. Yi Shuang bawled in anger. If it were in the immortal realm, she could kill this kind of trash 10,000 times with a breath, but she was actually in a disadvantageous position here, suppressed by the realm power. If she unleashed a full-strength attack, she would be able to annihilate the King of Demon Servants, but she would be ejected out of the vast lands, and the foreign realm was sealed off by a formation which was enough to kill her. Perish together? She obviously wasn't willing to. She revealed all her strength, trying hard to buy time. Now, all that could be done was to wait for Purple Moon Emperor Court's reinforcements. Ling Han was hard-pressed even with Power of the Nation's blessing. Only his battle prowess advanced to Shattering Void Tier, while the others at most charged up to the Deity Transformation and Heaven Tier. Thus, the Shattering Void Tier battle prowess he had on his side were only Feng Peiyun, Yi Shuang, and him. Counting the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation, it would barely be 4. The other party had over 100 Shattering Void Tier elites, and more importantly, every one of them had power of Shattering Void Tier's 9th layer, and their battle prowess easily reached 10 stars. The stronger ones even reached 15 stars. How could this be blocked? The instant they came into close combat, the Great Ling Empire suffered heavy casualties. However, they had to fight. If these demon servants entered the North region would become a hellish land, then the same with 3 other regions, and lastly Middle State. Even the Sea region wouldn't be able to escape from such fate. So they had to be stopped here. As long as Ma Duo Bao arrived in time, his 20 stars battle prowess would be sufficient to make a clean sweep of the enemy. Ling Han fought desperately, using the Thunderclap 9th Heaven and the Demon Fairy Steps, saving people everywhere. Relying on his formidable physique and nature-defying recovery power, he attracted the joint attacks of large amounts of elites. The other party rather feared him. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han's current battle prowess was Shattering Void Tier 12 stars, even 13 stars, and on top of his physique and recovery power, he was enough to pose a serious threat to large amounts of Shattering Void Tier demon servants. Moreover, he was also Great Ling Empire's emperor. After killing him, everyone would no longer receive Power of the Nation's blessing, so he obviously became the highest priority target. This suited Ling Han's intention. Fighting several hundred Shattering Void Tier elites fiercely, he finally controlled the injuries and deaths of Great Ling Empire's troops. However, Ling Han was in a miserable condition. The opponents were demon servants, and the arts they cultivated were inharmonious with this realm, filled with corruption and evil. The striking power of their origin power wasn't very strong, but the destructive power went beyond it, causing immense damage to Ling Han's physique. Ling Han's physique was equal to rare metal, but their origin power was like acid, which could slowly refine him. Fortunately, Ling Han's recovery power was amazing. Still, under the repeated bombardment of hundreds of Shattering Void Tier enemies, his arms and legs were slowly corroded, and blood cavities appeared all over his body. After enduring for half a day, Ling Han was forced to use indestructible true fluid, instantly fully recovering his body. However, soon, bloody cavities reappeared on his body, looking so horrible that one could hardly bear to look at him. Niu will help you. Niu stepped into the vast sky and circled around the demon servants, lessening Ling Han's pressure. However, her power hadn't advanced to the Shattering Void Tier, and her influence was severely limited, making her bawl in anxiousness. The fierce battle carried on, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han was still holding out, but he only had 1 drop of indestructible true fluid left. Even indestructible true fluid had a resistance factor, and after continuous use in a short period of time, 1 drop's effects were obviously inferior to the previous. When the last drop of indestructible true fluid was used, what would he do? Sorry, we came late. With a loud halloo, 8 men and women flew over from afar. Every one of them emitted an imposing presence that could shake down the skies. The 8 kings arrived. Arriving late is always better than not arriving. Ling Han squeezed out a smile. Everyone, join the battle immediately. All right. The 8 kings all attacked. They each had shattering void tier 15 stars of battle prowess, and with their help, Ling Han's pressure was instantly greatly reduced. Pang, pang, pang. The rock spirit also ran over from afar. Its speed was no match for the 8 kings, truly making it run for its life. Ga, come all at once, just so that all of you can be killed. The king of demon servants sneered. You dare to divert your attention when fighting this lady? Yi Shuang spread open her 3,000-meter wings and slashed as if using 2 heavenly axes towards the king of demon servants. Humph, you think you can fight this king for this long because you're strong enough? The king of demon servants said in disdain. Come, form the formation. This king drink his fill of these humans' blood today. 100 shattering void tier elites immediately dispersed and formed some sort of formation. Instantly, their bodies emitted demonic chi one after another, surging into the body of the king of demon servants. Hong, the aura of the king of demon servants instantly grew explosively. Even Yi Shuang's face paled, and she said seriously, not good, this power is just about 20 stars. Shattering void tier's limit was 20 stars, but strictly speaking, it was power that couldn't surpass 20 stars with the addition of martial arts, mystic arts, and the like. Battle prowess could surpass it. For example, Ma Duo Bao without power of the nation's blessing had shattering void tier 20 stars of battle prowess. And on top of power of the nation, shattering void tier 20 stars was easy for him to achieve. The king of demon servants operated some sort of formation, which extracted the powers of the other demon servants and added it onto his own body, giving him an instantaneous leap in power. If power could approach close to 20 stars, then battle prowess surpassing 20 stars wouldn't be difficult. How was this going to be dealt with now? Where's Brother Ma? Ling Han asked. Thousand Corpse Sect's 18-eyed Corpse King appeared and revolted. His Majesty personally went to suppress it, the Lunar King said. Everyone's expressions were gloomy. Could these demon servants have discussed it in advance with the Thousand Corpse Sect? It was very possible because Thousand Corpse Sect was established by an elite of the underworld that went into the immortal realm. Ha ha ha, all of you will die. The king of demon servants attacked, swatting its palm at everyone. Demonic chi pervaded, and even eclipsed the world. Where's the eye of heavenly Tao? Hurry up and punish these filths. The rabbit jumped in anxiousness. Yi Shuang shook her head and said, these demon servants were originally from the vast lands, but only cultivated demonic arts, transforming their bodies into those of the underworld, so the eye of heavenly Tao won't expel them. Moreover, the tier of the king of demon servants didn't break through to the divine level, and so he also won't be expelled by the eye of heavenly Tao. The Lunar King struck with her palm, while shouting at Yi Shuang, can't you say something that makes people happy? Then everyone can't be birthed on the same year, same month, and same day, but can die on the same year, same month, and same day. Does that count as something that makes people happy? Yi Shuang said with a smile, and also attacked with her palm, joining hands with the 8 kings and Ling Han to resist the king of demon servants' overwhelming attack. Hong! The attack swatted down, and Ling Han, Yi Shuang, and the 8 kings were all sent flying, every one of them hacking out loads of blood. Not dying immediately was truly good luck. However, they couldn't even block a single move of the king of demon servants. Together, was there still hope? Chapter 853. The ship came again. Unless Ma Duo Bao came personally, they wouldn't be able to rival the king of demon servants, let alone annihilate it. However, Ma Duo Bao was restrained by the Thousand Corpse Sect. Water from afar quenched not fire couldn't possibly help them. What were they to do? Ling Han frowned. He could only store everyone into the Black Tower. They definitely couldn't all die here. As long as they didn't die, then everything was possible. Besides, once Ma Duo Bao realized what was going on, he would be able to quickly lend a helping hand. It could only be so. Everyone, I have a spatial divine tool that can save our lives. Don't resist my divine senses envelopment later. I'll bring everyone inside. Ling Han sent a divine sense transmission to the 8 kings and Yi Shuang Shuang. Spatial divine tool. Yi Shuang Shuang's beautiful eyes immediately widened. This thing was extremely precious. Even in the divine realm, only the top almighties could refine it. She'd never thought Ling Han would possess one. No wonder she smelled the presence of an amazing treasure on him. The 8 kings all nodded. The situation developing to this stage was not something they could control anymore, and only Ma Duobao could turn the tides for them. Ling Han had a formidable physique, and was the first to stand up, but he suffered heavy injuries in the battle previously, and was currently riddled with scars, appearing too ghastly to look at. Ling Han. Hunyao leapt over. The little girl was also injured quite terribly, blood dripping from her forehead, giving off a distressingly beautiful look. Damn it! Ling Han regretted it on the inside. Previously, although he escaped from the sea race, he didn't take it to mind, since being able to escape unscathed from a true dragon in the Shattering Void tier wasn't something to be ashamed of. But now, he was utterly defeated, and with the invasion of demon servants, countless of living beings would be murdered in cold blood. As a king, how could he possibly feel well? The power of the nation was a double-edged sword, and now it was biting back. Hee, leave your lives here for this king. The king of demon servants laughed loudly, and struck with his palm again. Battle prowess surpassing Shattering Void tier 20 stars shook heaven and earth, even forcibly tearing apart space. Hong! At this moment, a ship's bow suddenly rammed out of a spatial fissure. T, again. Previously, Ma Duobao had attacked the 5 sects, and Shattering Void 20 stars of battle prowess burst forth, tearing apart space immediately, resulting in a divine ship crashing out. It was unknown how long it sailed in the void, but there were still dead souls that hadn't dispersed, and their strength was nature-defyingly powerful. Now, was it going to happen again? The ship's bow rammed out, revealing a 900-meter ship. However, this ship was different from the previous one. There obviously wasn't any breach on it, its flag was distinct, and there were even female soldiers that kept watch at the ship's bow. Ling Han could see clearly that a strange being was drawn on the flog of fish swimming in the sea, suddenly breaking out of the water and turning into a rock, roaming between heaven and earth. It was clearly only a painting, yet an animated image was produced in his mind, truly mystical. The ship lay between the king of demon servants and Ling Han, the 8 kings, and the others. Who is it, daring to stop this king? The king of demon servants immediately shouted. His current battle prowess was at the height of 20 stars, which was invincible in this realm, making his confidence blow through the roof. Ling Han and the 8 kings' expressions were strange. They'd seen the impressiveness of another divine ship, and the girl on it even lashed away the eye of heavenly Tao. You're asking for trouble. No one on the ship paid attention to him. An old woman in cyan clothes walked to the bow, and glanced down, her gaze stopping on Hunyao, instantly revealing a pleasantly surprised look. Xiao. More than 10 people immediately leapt off the ship. All were women, but none were dressed as soldiers. They all wore battle suits of generals, appearing to have considerable status. It's an honor to see the milady one. These girls all bowed down, saluting towards Hunyao. The old woman in cyan clothing was an exception. She revealed a smile and said, "Little girl, this old one finally found you." You people! The king of demon servants was furious. There were people in this world that dared to ignore him? He sneered and swung his hand at these girls. When they turned into a pool of blood, they would regret their current attitude, right? Young lady, who hurt you? All the girls asked Hunyao, every one of them revealing furious expressions. Although Hunyao was unclear as to why, she was quite clever and mischievous, immediately pointing at the king of demon servants and those demon servants. She said, "It's him and him." All the girls stood up and turned around, looking towards the king of demon servants. This was extremely strange. The king of demon servants already attacked, but with the speed of Shattering Void tier 20 stars battle prowess, how come the attack hadn't hit yet? It was as if time was frozen. A female general attacked and pressed towards the king of demon servants. Hong, heaven and earth began lamenting, and with a paw, the king of demon servants was instantly shocked into pieces, its presence instantly disappearing. It died just like that. This was shattering void tier 20 stars of battle prowess, invincible in this realm, so how was it possible to be killed instantly with one move? Yi Shuang lost her calm and shouted, "This is divine level power." Divine level power again. Ling Han and the 8 kings' expressions were very strange. Were they really living in a sealed-off small world now that divine level power appeared continuously? Another large ship, and just as terrifying. Those demon servants were completely shocked. What was going on? They'd slept soundly for countless millennia to turn their bodies into demons, and they should have been invincible in the world when they came out. They even had the important task to bring the vast lands into the underworld, being able to create history, but having just walked out of the desolate north, their boss died. How could they accept it? Long, as the world shook violently, the eye of heavenly Tao appeared. It could be seen clearly that there was a bleeding wound on the eyeball, which actually hadn't healed after such a long time. "Milady's aura," a female general said. "It was injured by Milady. However, Milady didn't annihilate it, then we should also show mercy," the other female generals said one after another. The old woman in cyan clothing looked up at the sky, and said indifferently, "Get lost." The eye of heavenly Tao immediately blinked. "You guys think that you're all that, woman, being able to injure me with a lash?" It was infuriated, and actuated the might of heaven and earth, attempting to expel these people. The small world couldn't allow divine-level power. "I told you to get lost, didn't you hear?" The old woman in cyan clothing widened her eyes, instantly emitting an infinitely imposing presence. The eye of heavenly Tao's wound split open, and large amounts of blood gushed out. "Fuck!" At this instant, everyone started to shout curses. Too unacceptable, the dignified eye of heavenly Tao, the embodiment of heaven and earth's will, actually couldn't endure an old woman's gaze. What was the eye of heavenly Tao? The eye of heavenly Tao shivered, feeling an intense fear. It could feel that the being below possessed the power to destroy it. A few female generals turned around and attacked the demon servants. Hong, divine level power was used without restraint, instantly wiping out all the demon servants. Divine level power should be forbidden from appearing in the small world, but they attacked without restraint in front of the eye of heavenly Tao. This was the most impressive cheat in the world, right? Everyone stared agape, feeling that they could boast about the events of today for their entire life. Seeing this scene, this lifetime was worth it. The eye of heavenly Tao wailed, and left in a flash. "You guys go cause a disturbance, I don't care anymore." Chapter 854. Bargain. Who would have thought that what should have been a major crisis was actually resolved so easily? Of course, it was also extremely shocking that divine beings descended and intervened, suppressing the eye of heavenly Tao so much that it had no temper to show at all. This was definitely a grand spectacle, which could be said as having given the demon servants enough face. "Young lady, let's go home." The old woman in cyan clothing held on Hunyo's hand. With divine light circulating, Hunyo's injuries immediately healed. "No, Nyo wants to stay with Ling Han." Hunyo struggled in a hurry, leaping behind Ling Han's back. The old woman in cyan clothing immediately looked towards Ling Han, and the other female generals did so as well, staring at Ling Han with an unfriendly gaze. It was natural abducting children, moreover their milady, this man truly deserved to die. The old woman in cyan clothing stared at Ling Han, and a terrifying oppressive pressure circulated. Pooh! Ling Han instantly burst out with blood. His body even crackled explosively as his bones groaned, and even broke. The physique that he was so proud of actually couldn't withstand the old woman's stare. As expected of a divine being that could ignore even the small world's rules. Yi Shuang was numb all across the face. She muttered, "What sort of powerful being is this? Even breaking the small world's rules. Could it be a Genesis tier powerhouse? God, this lady was fortunate enough to see a Genesis tier powerhouse. This was truly invincible power, not to mention Ma Duobao personally arriving. Even if the 5 great sects all descended and unleashed their strongest might, they would all probably be annihilated by a single move of this old woman. Won't allow you to hurt Ling Han." Hunyo stepped forward in a rush, spreading her small hands to guard in front of Ling Han. She stared angrily at the old woman and emitted a shocking killing intent as a divine light glowed from her chest, emitting a supreme presence. The legacy's power. All the female generals looked sincerely devoted, and knelt down one after another, muttering something and looking at Hunyo with a feverish gaze. Except for the old woman in cyan clothing. Smiling, she said, "As expected, Yun's legacy's power was handed to you. Little girl, you're the milady of our rock palace, a supreme ruler in the future. How could you be restrained by a man? Allow me to eliminate this future trouble." "Don't you dare!" Hunyo turned and hugged Ling Han. "Ling Han is Nyo's. If you dare touch a single hair of his, Nyo will kill herself." She seemed to be aware that she couldn't do anything about the old woman's power, so she could only use her own life as a threat. Ling Han snorted, put Hunyo down and said, "I have no enmity nor hatred with you, Senior, yet Senior insists on killing me. What sort of principle is that? You're crazy. This being is too powerful. Unless I completely recover, I won't be her match at all." Small Tower shouted inside his mind, its tone sounding terrified for the first time. Being able to make Small Tower lose its calm, the power of this old woman could be imagined. The old woman sneered and said, "Brat, you're quite daring. You do know that if I want to kill you, no one can stop it? Won't allow you to hurt Ling Han." Hunyo gesticulated with her hands and feet angrily. Senior's strength is indeed far above this junior's, but this junior's strength being inferior doesn't mean that he has no pride. Ling Han was unyielding. "Senior can kill me but can't silence me." "Ha ha ha." The old woman in cyan clothing laughed heartily. "Supreme Elder, this brat has a very strong influence on Milady. It's better to kill him," a female general suggested. "Yes, Milady is young, and doesn't know any better, being most easily enchanted. This person should be killed for his intentions." The old woman in cyan clothing waved her hand and said, "It's fine. When we return, we'll never see this brat again anyway. Seeing that he has some backbone, we'll spare his life." "Yes, Supreme Elder," all the female generals replied sternly. The old woman in cyan clothing looked at Hunyo smilingly, and said, "Little girl, follow me back." Not going. Hunyo shook her head anxiously. The old woman in cyan clothing sighed, and said, "Then the old woman can only kill that Ling Han or whatever." "No." Hunyo was anxious, pointing at the old woman's nose, and said, "Didn't you say that you won't hurt Ling Han?" "But you don't listen, this old woman has no other way," the old woman in cyan clothing said with a smile. Hunyo pouted, and after thinking over and over again, she finally nodded, and said, "Okay, Nyo will comply with you." "Now that's a good girl," the old woman said with a smile. She'd lived for countless of years, so could she not handle a little girl? Hunyo's gaze turned and she said, "But Nyo wants to bring Ling Han with her." "Pooh!" The old woman in cyan clothing instantly choked, almost coughing. Why was this little girl so hard to deal with? She said sternly, "No, this boy definitely cannot return with us." Hunyo bawled and started to cause a fuss, but the old woman was unfazed. "Don't worry, you go back with them first, I'll definitely find you." Ling Han said. So what if it was a divine realm powerhouse? He would eventually cultivate to that level one day. "You promise?" Hunyo said miserably. Ling Han nodded and said extremely discreetly, "I promise." All the female generals looked at Ling Han with contempt. The brat didn't know how powerful the force they belonged to was at all. Even if you cultivate till you're a corpse, it'll still be vastly above you. It was impossible for him to tread in their territory in this lifetime. Don't even imagine it. "Fine." Hunyo agreed reluctantly, walking slowly towards the old woman in cyan clothing, and said with her head tilted, "Nyo wants to bring some people, or else Nyo will definitely be very disobedient." The old woman in cyan clothing laughed loudly and said, "As long as it's not this brat, anyone's fine." Hunyo was finally delighted, pointed at Hellion Sun Shui and said, "Take this woman with no chest." She paused momentarily and pointed at the Lunar King and said, "And this big charming girl, Nyo would be worried." Then she pointed at Yi Shuang, "And this small charming girl, Nyo's also worried about." Her jealousy erupted. Even Lu Yutong, Li Si Chan, and Zhu Xian were called. including even Ling Jianshui. Ling Han's expression was strange. Hun Yo truly planned on making him utterly alone. However, this force was definitely also a supreme existence in the divine realm, and being able to ascend into the divine realm and having Hun Yo's care, it was actually a great opportunity for them all. Lord Nyo Nyo, bring Uncle Rabbit. Bring Uncle Rabbit. The rabbit was extremely proactive. Now that Hun Yo became some milady of the divine realm, her future prospects were amazing, so Uncle Rabbit obviously wanted to board this tailwind ship. Hun Yo, however, snorted and said, "You keep Ling Han company. Take good care of Ling Han, don't let him get bored, much less get hurt, or else Nyo will eat you." The rabbit bemoaned heaven and earth. What sort of sin did it commit for it to be abandoned? Ling Han didn't plan on convincing Hun Yo to change her mind. It wasn't a bad idea to have the people by his side follow Hun Yo. First, they could receive better cultivation resources and environment, and second, it was safer than being by his side. Except for the great enemy of Rock Palace that resulted in the original milady's death. However, seeing the old woman in cyan clothing and the others, Rock Palace should be an extremely powerful force with deep roots, or else even with their milady dead, how could they not have been extinguished? Ling Han nodded, letting out the people inside the Black Tower, and had them board the ship. Chapter 855. Departure. Hun Yo's jealousy was extremely intense, for the women beside Ling Han were all taken away, and only a bunch of men was left with him. For example, the Rain Emperor, Mu Rongqing, Feng Piyun, the Rabbit, Rock Spirit. There was no fear of them turning him the other way. The young milady's words very effective. No matter whether they were willing or not, they had to board the ship. Some people didn't really mind, and were even delighted, but some people were reluctant to part, especially Ling Han's parents, who had always had more partings and gatherings with their son, and now that they were leaving again, they were heartbroken. Fortunately, their grandson was by their side, giving them something to place their hopes in, or else they would definitely think about their son constantly, their hair turning gray. Zhu Xian'er, Li Xichan, and Lu Yutong were filled with tears. Helian Sun Shui was headstrong, but still revealed her reluctance. The Lunar King shouted, "Why bring this king away too? This king has nothing that's unclear going on with this brat?" Yeah, this lady is as clear as ice and jade, having completely nothing to do with that brat. Yi Shuang also protested. Although she wanted to return to the immortal realm, she wasn't willing to do it in this way. Hun Yo, however, snorted and said, "Big fairy, little fairy, big and small fairy, Nyo's worried about all of them. Take them all away." After everyone boarded the ship, the divine ship flew up slowly. "Ling Han, you definitely have to find Nyo." At the bow, Hun Yo waved her hand with all her strength. "Definitely," Ling Han said in a low voice. Soon, he'd charge into the immortal realm and definitely gather everyone, and he'd also make the people of Rock Palace have a whole new respect for him. Hong, the divine ship, blasted open a spatial fissure, and zoomed right in. After the ship's stern also disappeared, the spatial fissure immediately disappeared as if the divine ship had never appeared at all. A terrifying oppressive force surged as the Eye of Heavenly Tao appeared and blinked in the sky, blood dripping from it. The world also rained down blood as if lamenting for the Eye of Heavenly Tao. The massive eye that represented the heaven and earths will stared at Ling Han as if wanting to kill him. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back, no inferior in his imposing manner. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was indeed powerful. It was enough to kill him, but heaven and earth had its own relesso. As long as one didn't defy the natural order, heaven and earth wouldn't touch him. It was a rule that the Eye of Heavenly Tao also had to obey, or else, without rules, heaven and earth would also lose the meaning of its existence. He worked for humanity and lived up to his conscience and the people of the world, so why should he fear the Eye of Heavenly Tao? The Eye of Heavenly Tao blinked, and finally disappeared again. Damn, seventh sister's been kidnapped. How do we explain to the boss? The remaining 7 kings finally caught their breath, and complained incessantly. Ling Han smiled at them, and said, "Thanks to everyone for rushing to the rescue." However, the Lunar King entering the Divine Realm 1 in advance might not be a bad thing. If you guys don't try hard, maybe when you guys meet again, the Lunar King will hang you guys up and beat you. The 7 kings' expression changed drastically. The Lunar King definitely would do such a thing. No, they had to try hard to cultivate and increase the power of their divine sense, which was the main direction of cultivation at their level. Their cultivation couldn't improve, but their divine sense could, so once they entered the divine realm and broke through to the god tier, they'd welcome a period of improving by leaps and bounds.
The 7 kings took their leave.
The Lunar King being brought to the divine realm was a great matter, and obviously had to be reported to Ma Duo immediately. After Ling Han sent them off, he returned to the imperial palace with Feng Peyun and the Rain Emperor. Although the demon servants were completely annihilated, cleaning up the demonic qi and rebuilding the desolate north was a very problematic matter. Feng Peyun was very bold and generous. Seeing that Ling Han didn't know whom to call Big Brother to, so he simply decided to have the 4 of them become sworn brothers. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing gladly agreed, and now Feng Peyun was obviously still the eldest, the Rain Emperor the 2nd eldest, and Mu Rongqing the 3rd eldest, while Ling Han dropped a grade from 3rd to 4th, and became the youngest brother. This made him quite gloomy, being the 3rd had already been pitiful enough, but now he was reduced to being the 4th.
With nothing to do, he could only cultivate.
Ling Han and his brothers strived to become stronger. They'd seen great power, even the eye of heavenly Tao could only yield in front of it, deeply moving them and arousing a fierce fighting spirit within them.
They wanted to dictate their own destiny, and to do so, they needed the support of powerful strength. Time went by quietly.
Strangely, the sea race made no movements, and it was unknown whether they turned their nose up at the land or were waiting for something. Besides, although Ao Jian was powerful, he wasn't powerful enough to rival Ma Duo, not to mention the latter still had power of the nation's blessing, which made him even more terrifying. After half a year, Ling Han finally broke through to the shattering void tier. Hong, long, heaven and earth immediately reacted, with thunderclouds crowding together. Dazzling white lightning was flickering within as it was in the process of brewing a terrifying danger. Treading into the shattering void tier, one needed to pass the heavenly tribulation. Such beings truly possessed the strength to threaten heaven and earth, so the latter would impose restrictions, and only when they pulled through the heavenly tribulation would they truly be able to become shattering void tier existences. Otherwise, there was only one word for what would await them: death. This also proved the bearing of the shattering void tier. Even heaven and earth would interfere. Ling Han stood proudly between heaven and earth, enduring the strikes of the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly tribulation became 9th heaven's divine thunder, separate from the 5 elements, its power infinite. Hong, long, the divine thunder was extremely terrifying. Its power reached shattering void tier 20 stars. Usually, what battle prowess could one have, having just broken through to the shattering void tier? Barely having 1 star was already praiseworthy, and obviously one couldn't rival shattering void tier 2 stars. Fortunately, the heavenly tribulation continued for a limited amount of time, half a day. Otherwise, if the heavenly tribulation had to be defeated to pass it, there'd probably only be 1 in 10,000 of the shattering void tiers remaining in the world. Pa, the divine thunder struck Ling Han's body, yet it was like small rain sweeping by, having no effect at all. The instant Ling Han set foot in the shattering void tier, his physique also surpassed 10th tier rare metal, reaching the level of divine metal. So, what threat could the bombardment of such divine thunder possibly pose to him? Ling Han instead relaxed his body and mind, absorbing the power of the heavenly tribulation to improve his body of lightning. His body of lightning was only at the level of a novice, and to attain great mastery, the power of lightning needed not only had to be stronger, but also purer, so it definitely wasn't achievable by refining normal lightning. The heavenly tribulation definitely could be used. It was known as divine thunder, after all.
Invigorating.
Ling Han absorbed the power of thunder while the thunderclap 9th heaven circulated within his body, changing his body and advancing towards great mastery. Truly envious, our youngest brother is the first to advance to the shattering void tier, yet I'm still a sliver away from heaven tier. Mu Rongqing said and shook his head, feeling happy for Ling Han, and at the same time feeling immense pressure. His cultivation speed was not slow already, but it definitely couldn't compare with Ling Han's. The Rain Emperor smiled and said, "Our youngest brother is a true genius, not only having exceptional martial arts talent, but even being a master at alchemy and formations. You don't have to be envious, just cultivate diligently." Feng Piyun also nodded repeatedly, and said, "Our youngest brother's physique is truly terrifying, not only remaining unharmed under the bombardment of divine thunder, but also transforming it for his use." "Report." A soldier ran over, knelt down and said, "Report to the three kings. The special ambassador of Purple Moon Emperor's court requests a meeting." Small Tower sneered, and said, "The first layer's not as simple as tempering the physique. It contains the general principles of a threefold art. It's just that you haven't learned the second layer of the art, so you're totally oblivious that you've actually grasped more than you know." Ling Han sighed in relief and said, "You mean I can grasp the second layer of the art quickly?" "I didn't say that." Small Tower swayed as if shaking its head. "If you're naturally more stupid, then not comprehending it in a millennium would be quite normal." Ling Han disregarded it, and started to laugh. He said, "This is the authentic and slanderous Small Tower, feels much more familiar." Small Tower was somewhat driven mad. Was being cheap an innate quality of this brat? Whenever it took a kinder tone, the former would seem uncomfortable. It snorted, and said, "Indestructible Heaven Scroll's first layer cultivates the physique. The second layer cultivates the divine sense. Here's the art. Go comprehend it on your own." It shook lightly. Countless golden characters circulated from within the Black Tower instantly, rushing forth in Ling Han's consciousness. Strictly speaking, these weren't words, at least Ling Han couldn't recognize them at all, but it didn't hurt for him to comprehend the meaning within them. It surpassed the level of language and words, and reached directly to the essence. He originally wanted to ask what the third layer, but his attention was immediately attracted by these golden characters, and he couldn't help but drift off within them, starting to fathom them. Indestructible Heaven Scroll's second layer cultivated the divine sense. The divine sense of living beings was extremely fragile. For example, even now that Ling Han crossed into the Shattering Void tier, if he encountered the Sword King, who used Sword Heart Illumination in a sneak attack, then Ling Han's body would be fine, but his divine sense would be directly extinguished. To withstand it was also easy. Drawing away or also opposing it with the heart of martial arts would do it as well. That would be the battle between divine senses, more dangerous, and if someone was defeated, their divine sense would be annihilated, and flesh would become an empty shell that would slowly rot, or perhaps birth a new soul after 1,000 years. Ling Han's physique now reached the level of divine metal, which was definitely imperishable in the lower realm. If his divine sense were extinguished, it was extremely likely that a new soul would be born, but that would no longer be him. However, if he cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll second layer, his divine sense would be strengthened, and at last become as stable as his physique. Not only would it be able to leave his body, but even remain intact when enduring a powerful impact. Even rebirth with a single thought. How could only the body being imperishable be truly imperishable? Ling Han was unable to contain his joy, and couldn't help but begin to comprehend it. When he had slightly comprehended it and stopped abruptly, 10 days had already passed. He flew down from the sky, and saw that Feng Piyun and the others were waiting for him. Feng Piyun and the two others greeted him, and asked concernedly, "Younger brother, did you encounter no problems when breaking through, suffering internal injuries?" Ling Han instantly revealed an embarrassed look and said, "Sorry to worry you older brothers. I'm fine, just had a sudden comprehension, so I immediately began trying to fathom it." "That's good." The three brothers all nodded. "Right, a special ambassador came from Purple Moon Emperor's court." Rain Emperor suddenly pat his head, remembering something. "What's the matter?" Ling Han asked. "Ma Duo Bao is about to split open the skies, and specially invited us to attend the ceremony," Feng Piyun said with a smile. Ling Han thought of it, and indeed, the period of 1 year had ended. Time passed so quickly. It had been half a year since Hu Niu and his parents had left, and he constantly cultivated in this half a year to take up all his time, not thinking about his family and lovers, but now he was suddenly flooded with yearning, making him wish to charge to the divine realm immediately. "Very well, let's tidy up and get to the ceremony," Ling Han said with a smile. "Best that this fatty is strong enough so that we can also benefit from it." The three brothers laughed loudly. Splitting open the skies was a matter simply too important, and each day that the skies weren't split open to enter the divine realm would be one more day that they would have to worry about the 5-sec scheme. Sit was truly irritating. Moreover, The sea race couldn't be neglected, either. They obviously couldn't watch blankly as the vast lands broke away from their grasp. The rabbit, rock spirit, gold-seeking rat, and Helian Tianyun all came, and in addition to Guang Yuan, Ken Yi, and the other generals, the party of about 50 people set out for Purple Moon Emperor's court. Splitting open the skies was the most heroic undertaking in the small world. Chapter 857. Attending the ceremony. Ling Han put everyone except for Feng Peyun and Helian Tianyun into the Black Tower, and then hastened swiftly like the wind and lightning. The shattering void tier speed was obviously the fastest in the world. Helian Tianyun advanced to the shattering void tier half a month earlier than Ling Han. With the almost restrictionless provision of spirit medicine in the Black Tower, and him having no bottlenecks to worry about, he could improve as much as the amount of spirit medicine he took, so he was obviously extremely fast. Although I'm only at the first layer of the shattering void tier now, my battle prowess can rival 10 stars, and in addition to Power of the Nation's blessing, my battle prowess can reach 18 stars. Ling Han tested his own strength while dashing. However, Power of the Nation's battle prowess wasn't simply addition as expected, or else my current battle prowess extreme should be 19 stars, even 20 stars. The higher the tier, the weaker increase the same power brings, a natural thing. Just like when I was still in the heaven tier, my own battle prowess compared to the Power of the Nation's increase was completely not worth mentioning. 1 star in the shattering void tier is a world's difference, and looking at it this way, if my own battle prowess reached 20 stars, then in terms of the current Power of the Nation, the improvement to my battle prowess will probably be at most 2 stars. However, regarding improvements above the limit, even 1 star of battle prowess is extremely terrifying, being equal to an inherent change. After 3 days, they entered the middle state, and then entered Purple Moon Emperor's court's territory. Instantly, Ling Han and Feng Peyun both lost Power of the Nation's blessing. Suddenly losing immense power made them feel the emptiness of loss. Ling Han couldn't get used to it, but then suddenly realized something, saying, Power of the Nation indeed is a good thing, but it can only be a support. Relying on it definitely can't become a habit. Feng Peyun also nodded sternly. Martial artists ultimately pursued their own strength. If you relied too much on the Power of the Nation, then would you not go to places where the Power of the Nation couldn't reach? If so, exploring historic sites and the like would have completely nothing to do with you. The 3 of them came to the Imperial City. They stopped outside, letting everyone out from the Black Tower, and then sent their credentials, going along with the formal visitation protocol. Ma Duo Bao sent out the Heavenly Astral King, welcoming people of the Great Ling Empire to the Imperial Palace. Congrats to the Great Ling King, finally advancing to the shattering void tier. Heavenly Astral King said to Ling Han. He remembered that the first time he saw Ling Han's strength was beneath his notice, but now, he unexpectedly reached the same level as his so quickly. Of course, he was fully confident in his own battle prowess, and believed that if Ling Han truly wanted to be his equal, it would take at least over 100 years to improve and polish his tier. Ling Han chuckled and said, Half a year since we parted. Heavenly Astral King's bearing is still just as refined. Speaking some civilities for a while, they entered the Imperial Palace. Splitting open the skies was set to be 3 days later. At this time, countless noble families in the Middle State rushed over, priding over the qualification to enter the Imperial Palace. The Purple Moon Emperor's court was too powerful now. In the battle at Heaven's Sword Sect, the 5 sects were utterly defeated, resulting in Ma Duo Bao's reputation of being invincible. The world's first killing formation, shattering void tier 20 stars of battle prowess. Thus, when some girls heard that Ma Duo Bao didn't have an empress, they became restless, wanting to take down the world's most precious bachelor to reach the heavens in a single bound. Ma Duo Bao was in the process of making the last preparations. He didn't see anyone these few days, clearing his mind and focusing his spirit, adjusting his status to the optimum. Ling Han obviously understood this. He would do the same if it were him. On their way, they were still talking about the matter just now in high spirits, feeling that their ancestor was impressive as expected. They didn't even announce their surname, and the other party backed off already. What happened? Lu family's ancestor and the few important figures of the family were already seated, but these juniors couldn't sit still, striking up a conversation wherever they saw a beauty. These youngsters began speaking merrily, and obviously regarded Ling Han and the others as beneath contempt. Lu family's ancestor thoughtlessly turned his head to look, and his face couldn't help but twitch, immediately becoming stern. He pointed at Ling Han and the others and said, "The group you guys were talking about, is it them?" "Ancestor, it is them." The youngsters nodded one after another. This old man will beat you guys to death." Lu family's ancestor almost failed to catch his breath, and instantly lashed out at the youngsters' faces. Chapter 858. Terribly Scared. Other people didn't recognize him, but would Lu family's ancestor not know Feng Piyun, who was an extremely rare Shattering Void tier loose cultivator? There were quite a few legends regarding him. Feng Piyun also cultivated Sword Heart, having the reputation of being invincible in the same tier. Not to mention a Lu family's ancestor who had just advanced into Shattering Void tier, he acknowledged that he wouldn't be Feng Piyun's match even at the 5th layer Shattering Void tier. Moreover, how many Shattering Void tier elites did the other party have in total? 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 people, and 1 giant stone puppet. Did you guys eat a dragon's guts? Wasn't this just delivering a pretext to exterminate the Lu family? Pa. Lu family's ancestor gave these youngsters a sound thrashing, making them feel completely baffled. After beating them until they were covered with bruises, Lu family's ancestor stopped and said, "Don't heal your injuries, and follow this old man to go give an apology." What? The youngsters finally knew that the ancestor gave them a sound thrashing because of Ling Han and the others, making them puzzled. It was not like they weren't rampant normally, they were even more exaggerated, doing things even more domineering countless times, but their family wouldn't even say a word of rebuke then, right? Yet now they not only took a fierce beating, but were also going to apologize. Www. Who were these people? If they were kick-ass, then why did they back off? Well, obviously in fear of the Lu family, no? Ancestor, why? Someone asked. He was Lu family's favorite descendant, and only he dared to ask at this time. The others all held their breath and concentrated, wanting to know the answer, or else they'd feel wronged. Do you guys think that this old man breaking through to the Shattering Void tier means that he's invincible in the world? Lu family's ancestor snorted and said, "Amongst the people that you guys bullied earlier, there were 4 Shattering Void tier elites, and at least one of them only needs 1 move to defeat this old man." Pooh! The youngsters instantly spurted out, how was it possible? In their eyes, their ancestor was invincible even if he fell short a little. He would still be undefeated. The Shattering Void tier stood at the peak of the world, and absolutely didn't need to fear anyone. Lu family's ancestor sighed inwardly. If he were free of attachments and constraints, then he indeed wouldn't need to fear anyone. Was it not easy to run for Shattering Void tier elites if they wanted? But now, he had a family, businesses and descendants, but Feng Piyun was completely alone, so how could he not lower his head? He didn't move, waiting till Ling Han and the others sat down. He'd immediately take the juniors to go apologize. Lu family's people all watched, and revealed a shocked look because the position of Ling Han and the others was far above theirs, at the highest place of the sky-splitting platform, where the entire scene could be seen. The seats couldn't be chosen recklessly. There was consideration for where each force sat, a type of recognition from the Purple Moon Emperor's court. And in the world, who dared to have objections against Purple Moon Emperor's court? Would you dare protest against an elite with Shattering Void tier 20 stars of battle prowess? Below Ling Han, a whole area was vacant. It was a kind of stance of Purple Moon Emperor's court that no force could sit as equals with the Great Ling Empire, being not even 1 notch lower, but instead several levels lower. Seeing this scene, not to mention Lu family's youngsters who were unconvinced, even Lu family's ancestor was somewhat displeased on the inside. He admitted that he wasn't Feng Piyun's match, but everyone was in the Shattering Void tier. He was only slightly inferior, but still in the same level. Now that the two of them not only did not sit as equals, but were also several levels apart, wasn't this underestimating him too much? Not only him, the other people also noticed. Not to mention Ma Duo Bao, Any of the 7 kings could take care of him. The old man loved face, and obviously wouldn't want to be defeated publicly. Chapter 859. Unequaled Physique. They're about to fight. They're about to fight. Various people from the Liu family watched with excitement. Naturally, each and every one of them wished for Ling Han to lose. Ling Han smiled casually as he stepped into the air. It was as though there were invisible stairs in the sky which allowed him to ascend as if he was climbing a hill. In consideration of your seniority, you can have the first 3 moves. He beckoned the other party over with a finger. How haughty! Man Jingyi's anger reached the limit, causing his white hair to dance in the air. He began to burn his qi and blood. Determined to fight to the fullest of his power. He wanted to defeat this arrogant youngster in 1 move. Even if you're amazing enough to enter the void-shattering tier at your young age, you should still learn that there is always someone better out there. Hong, his imposing aura continuously became stronger, reaching the battle prowess of void-shattering tier's 8 stars, matching his cultivation. Be suppressed for me. He flew across the air, going towards Ling Han as he focused his suppression on him. Ling Han neither dodged nor retreated, letting the other party come attack him. Pa! He was immediately hit with a palm on his chest. Hiss, this was what he called a 3-move handicap. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. They sucked in cold air as they couldn't believe their eyes. Allowing someone a number of moves was only about letting the other party attack first. One still had to resist what they should resist, and one still had to avoid what they should avoid. It did not by any means refer to neither dodging nor defending, suffering the attacks by taking them head-on with just one's body. The fact that shattering void-tier martial artists didn't die was simply because no one could obstruct them if they wanted to escape. Yet by messing around this way, even those in the shattering void tier can die quickly. Now, he would definitely instant kill him with 1 move. Ah! Yet Man Jingyi screamed. Both his arms trembled, and appeared unfathomably distorted. His bones were dislocated. What? Everyone hardly dared believe their eyes. Goddamn, one person attacked the other with a powerful palm strike, yet the result was that the former's arms broke? Just where was logic in that? Pa! Man Jingyi's origin power shook, resetting the bones that had dislocated. His cheek twitched, disbelief written all over his face. How was this possible? The other party bore the power of his palm, yet not only was he unharmed, it was himself who got his bones dislocated. This defensive power was completely unnatural. There are still 2 moves, Ling Han said indifferently. There was absolute silence. No one spoke, and only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard besides the echo of Ling Han's voice. Even the 7 kings were indescribably astonished. It looks like this boy's physique became stronger again. Before, it was at the level of a 10th tier precious metal, so did it now become as strong as a divine metal? Fuck, is there still anyone in this world who can kill him? Let alone kill, is there anyone who can even wound him? An agonized expression appeared on Man Jingyi's face. Even if he could defeat Ling Han, so what? There would be no glory in that. How could such an abnormal person exist? It was no wonder that Ling Han could be given the highest position by the Purple Moon Court. Once someone experienced this sort of defensive power, who would be unable to accept him? He took a deep breath. It was too late to retreat, so he could only hope that Ling Han's defensive power couldn't be so awesome at all times. If he could do a bit better against Ling Han, he would be able to retain some face. After holding his breath for 3 full breaths, he unleashed an ultimate technique. Ash Gray River Stream, annihilating 10,000 miles. Hong, he stirred the water element in the world, transforming it into a black river, which faced Ling Han, trying to attack him. Each drop of the river water was congealed from pure origin power. He showed no arrogance, and didn't harp on the matter with Man Jingyi. Man Jingyi turned around casually, returning to his seat. However, at this moment, there was no longer anyone glancing at him at all. Instead, everyone's attention was completely focused on Ling Han now. He was a super new star. What, he's Ling Han, that heaven-grade alchemist? I really didn't expect that there would exist such a genius in this world, not only reaching the apex of alchemy, but also becoming so formidable on the martial path. He'll certainly become one of those who will dominate the world. Hee, if His Majesty succeeds at splitting open the sky, we will all become people of the divine grade, and at that time we can obtain the divine realm's resources to cultivate. Later, we won't necessarily lose to him. Indeed. Most of the people had recognized Ling Han's talent, but there were also those who looked at him with unkind eyes, not at all willing to accept him. However, Ling Han once more headed toward that seat, and there no longer was anyone who tried to stop him. If you aren't convinced, why not try delivering 3 moves? The old ancestor of the Liu family immediately approached with his juniors in tow, apologizing to Ling Han. Those juniors also finally knew that there was always someone better, and every single one of them was covered in cold sweat. With Ling Han's current strength, dealing with them would be like killing livestock. Would the old ancestor still dare have any objections now? Chapter 860. Ma Duo Bao splits open the skies. His Majesty has arrived, a god announced loudly. His Majesty has arrived. His Majesty has arrived. His Majesty has arrived. Any person who was a soldier of the Purple Moon Empire shouted loudly, causing the earth itself to shake and their cries to ring out in the air. Ma Duo Bao appeared. He was dressed in his imperial robes, but due to the width of his waist, he had instantly lost his majestic aura completely, causing many a girl to cover her grin. However, there were also many women with unique tastes whose eyes lit up, and they exclaimed at how cute he was. Only when the air he exuded surged past like a flood did many people shudder. This damn fatty was the person in the highest position in the whole world, as well as the most powerful person there. He had no equal. Under the barrage of this kind of aura, there were only a rare few that could maintain their composure, such as Ling Han, Helian Tianyun, Feng Peiyun, and the 7 kings. They were pitifully few. Ma Duo Bao strode over, and arrived in the center of the platform prepared to split open the skies. He stood firm and declared, "I shall split the skies open this day. Long live our Majesty!" The soldiers of the Purple Moon Empire all called out loudly, extremely excited. Splitting open the skies was a grand majestic feat that had never been done before. Ma Duo Bao pressed his hands down, indicating for the masses to quiet down. As you all know, the 5 sects are heartless, and treat our lower realm like their herb garden. Every 10,000 years, they would harvest all the living creatures of the entire realm and refine them into an alchemical pill. Their actions are extremely abominable. Since that is the case, we can only save ourselves. We'll split open the skies and strike the earth to raise our lower realm into the immortal realm. From now on, every citizen in the world would be a citizen of the immortal realm, and everyone would be like dragons. Hearing the last few words he said, everyone was incredibly excited. Citizens of the immortal realm. It was a qualitative upgrade. Being citizens of the immortal realm meant that there would be more cultivation resources, a better environment for martial arts, and brighter future prospects. If the initial limitation was the flower blossom tier, then they could possibly attain the spiritual infant or even deity transformation tier in the future. Split open the skies. Every man a dragon. Long live the Emperor. Everyone shouted loudly. There were even some whose voices were hoarse from their shouts. They were so excited they almost passed out. Ma Duo Bao did not continue speaking. Splitting open the skies would be the strongest declaration, better and superior than anything else. Ling Han was also paying close attention. If Ma Duo Bao could succeed, then he would instantly be able to enter into the immortal realm and find out the whereabouts of Hun Yo, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and the others. Furthermore, the cultivation rate in the immortal realm would definitely be much faster than in the lower realm. There was no need to doubt this fact. Ma Duo Bao lifted the mountain and river axe in a single go. Wang, this treasured tool immediately shone with brilliant light. Terrifying aura surged past, causing everyone to have a difficult time breathing. This was the manifestation of all the powers of a realm, the most powerful treasure of the lower realm. Ma Duo Bao trod on air and flew up, standing proudly in the sky. Open! He brandished the mountain and river axe, and delivered a heavy slash at the skies. Hong long long, the empty space was torn open by his strike, revealing a dark silent space as if an eye had opened. Wang, the eye of heavenly Tao appeared, still having an obvious injury. It stared coldly at Ma Duobao, but did not make any move. Ma Duobao had only struck once at this moment, and had yet to threaten the realm itself. Thus the eye of heavenly Tao did not move, but if Ma Duobao raised his battle prowess again and struck madly at the space, it would definitely put a stop to his actions. Its purpose was to maintain the balance and existence of this realm. If the lower realm ascended into the immortal realm, its existence would naturally have lost its purpose. Ma Duobao tossed a contemptuous look at it. His whole aura began to thicken madly, increasing little by little. His whole person was exuding a brilliant golden light as if he had become a dazzling golden god. Merely that aura would make any shattering void tier cultivator shiver. This had already exceeded 20 stars of shattering void tier. With the support of power of the nation, Ma Duobao's strength had reached a height that even the majority of shattering void tier cultivators could not imagine. 20 stars of strength, and battle prowess, possibly 22 stars, Ling Han said. He was the second emperor that had power of the nation, and the power of the nation he had attained was more or less about how much power of the nation Ma Duobao had, so he was the person qualified to speak the most. 20 stars of strength was the limit. Shattering void tier cultivators couldn't exceed that, and above that was the barrier to the immortal level. That was an impenetrable barrier. However, while strength could not be further increased, battle prowess could. Don't underestimate the mere increase of 2 stars of battle prowess. Improving further on the base of one's limit was much too difficult. Moreover, it was a tremendous pressure on Ma Duobao's physique as well, even if his physique was as tough as level 10 precious metal. The eye of heavenly Tao merely blinked once, and released the terrifying intimidation of the realm. This was a warning, telling Ma Duobao not to even dream of challenging the dignity of the realm. Ma Duobao laughed loudly, his hands once again brandishing the mountain and river axe, delivering a slash straight at the skies. Hong! This was an incredibly fearful strike. Not only was the empty space blasted open, it was even widening, and formed a gigantic hold as if it was about to swallow the whole world. Finally, the eye of heavenly Tao flew into a rage and flipped out. Xiao, a ray of light shot out from the eyeball, shooting quickly at Ma Duobao. Even you dare to stop me? Ma Duobao tossed a disdainful expression at it in a domineering fashion. He brandished the mountain and river axe, and slashed at the eye of heavenly Tao. If he wanted to split open the skies, he would have to first defeat the eye of heavenly Tao. This was the embodiment of the will of the realm. That ray of light struck the mountain and river axe, and an astonishing light exploded. Everyone could not help but close their eyes in fear that their eyes would be burnt to blindness. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and instantly saw everything clearly. He was not just here to attend the ceremony, but bore another heavy responsibility. If Ma Duobao failed, he would have to take over this heavy task. Thus, he now had to observe how powerful the Eye of Heavenly Tao was and what kind of deadly moves it possessed. Even if it had been wounded twice by the great powerhouses of the Rock Palace and fled, that was because those two existences were much too powerful, and not because the Eye of Heavenly Tao was weak. Hong, hong, hong. A great battle exploded in the skies. Floods of light surged out, every clash as loud as thunder, but aside from Ling Han and Helian Tianyun, no other person could clearly see the battle situation. This fatty can win, Helian Tianyun said with a nod. The Eye of Heavenly Tao's battle prowess has just surpassed the limit, and reached 21 stars, yet the damn fatty has reached 22 stars. If there are no accidents, the fatty is definitely going to win. Ling Han nodded, agreeing with Helian Tianyun's opinion. Under power of the nation, he also had about 18 stars of battle prowess, so his judgment would naturally not be far off. The Eye of Heavenly Tao's attacks were upright and frank, and that was stimulating the powers of the realm to slash out at Ma Duobao. Powers of the realm, also known as power of regulation, possessed incredibly frightening destructive abilities. Even a physique as tough as level 10 precious metal was useless to resist it. It would be sliced apart just like any other. Thus, even Ma Duobao dared not allow the Eye of Heavenly Tao to hit him. His figure flitted about in the air whilst he continued to brandish the axe in counterattacks. Not only was he a damn fatty, he was also an incredibly agile damn fatty. He was so fast he appeared like a blur to the eye. A manifestation of the realm has no spirit nor consciousness. Are you qualified to stop me? Ma Duobao smiled proudly. Hong, his aura suddenly spiked dramatically again, endless killing intent exuding from all over his body before it solidified. Xiao xiao xiao. This killing intent, like swords, shot quickly towards the eye of Heavenly Tao, and stabbed all over the eyeball. The first killing formation of the world finally expressed his might. Technically, Ma Duobao and the eye of Heavenly Tao were actually from the same source, because the killing formation on his body was naturally etched by the realm onto him, and he was the strongest formation of this realm. With a long shout, Ma Duobao waved the axe in an attack, wanting to slash apart the eye of Heavenly Tao in a single go. Chapter 861. Slashing the Eye of Heavenly Tao. From the point of view of the Eye of Heavenly Tao, it had to be feeling very gloomy. It was a grand, majestic embodiment of the will of the realm, yet it actually was wounded repetitively. This was something that had never happened before. However, it had no sentience, and would not really become angry. It merely stimulated powers of the realm and launched a counterattack against Ma Duobao. Too weak. Ma Duobao smirked coldly. He brandished the mountain and river axe in large movements, striking the Eye of Heavenly Tao so that it retreated little by little. Actually, it was not the Eye of Heavenly Tao that was weak, but Ma Duobao, who was expressing his full potential, that was too strong, so strong that even the Eye of Heavenly Tao was no match for him. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was endlessly sent flying from the axe strikes. This allowed the people below to see clearly, and they all began cheering loudly to encourage Ma Duobao. The Emperor is mighty. The Emperor is imperious. The Emperor is invincible. In the lower realm, every person was filled with reverence towards the Eye of Heavenly Tao. This was the embodiment of the will of the realm, and no one dared to disrespect it. If one did too many bloody atrocities that offended heaven and earth, they could possibly draw out the Eye of Heavenly Tao to kill them, and that meant definite death. But now, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was being madly oppressed, and this naturally made everyone feel extremely invigorated as if they were slaves that had finally managed to turn the tables on their master. They were all excited, their scalps numb. They shouted out hoarsely as if they themselves were that fatty that was showing off his godly might. Ma Duobao's attacks became more and more intense. Every slash from the axe would cause the Eye of Heavenly Tao to retreat a few dozen miles. He very obviously had the upper hand. However, the Eye of Heavenly Tao had no choice but to fight. Previously, those two ultimate elites from the Rock Palace had already thrashed it severely, but they had not intended to split open the skies, nor had they threatened the existence of the lower realm. That was not the case now. Ma Duobao's actions would determine whether it could continue to exist or otherwise. Hence, there was no retreat for the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Its only option was to fight, and that was the meaning of its existence. If it did not fight, its fate was death. The Eye of Heavenly Tao glowed. This was the resistance of the whole realm. It enlarged endlessly, and multiple golden chains shot out from the eyeball. These were solidified by the powers of the realm, and represented the regulations of the realm. In theory, the whole realm was definitely stronger than any individual being. The power you obtained had originated from this realm, so how was it possible that you would be able to surpass your origins? 20 stars of strength was the limit. However, since splitting open the skies was possible, naturally, it would not be a completely hopeless endeavor. The battle prowess limit of the Eye of Heavenly Tao was only 22 stars as well, and the one splitting open the skies could draw power from power of the nation, and thus possessed a wider capacity for advancement. As the saying went, never give up hope. However, how terrifying would battle prowess of 22 stars be? Pang, pang, pang. The chains formed by powers of the realm whipped out continuously, and seemed to have woven a net that could strangle to death any living being that dared to resist in the skies. Ma Duobao was indeed very strong, but 22 stars of battle prowess was already his limit. Although he could still fight back now, there was a limit to human ability. The moment his power was exhausted, the Eye of Heavenly Tao would turn the tables on him and kill him instead. Your Majesty! The 7 kings mumbled softly, their expressions incredibly anxious. Innumerable years ago, They, too, had traveled to this point. Ma Duobao still had not managed to break through his limits, and they were forced to give up the venture of splitting open the skies. Furthermore, to hide from the punishment from the Eye of Heavenly Tao, they had to seal themselves away with the time liquid. Could it be that they would have a repeat of their disastrous failure, and once again be left with grievances? Hee, so much time has already passed, and you think that I have not improved in the slightest? With a loud shout, Ma Duobao's body shook, and his whole body actually stretched out. Initially, he wasn't short, about the height of any ordinary person. However, his girth was much too astonishing, which made him appear short. Now, his girth was quickly shrinking, whereas his body was becoming taller. In a short while, he had reached 10 meters tall, his body tall and slender. What was fat about him anymore? He was a handsome, gigantic, and amazing man. Boss! The 7 kings' cheeks streamed with tears. This was their king, so handsome that even they would be envious. Ma Duobao had not just become fat. With a loud yell, even more power of the nation surged into his body, stimulating his battle prowess to increase further. Hong! His body seemed like it would explode at any moment. At first, he was only tall and slender, but now, he was shockingly sturdy. Every bit of muscle was trembling as if it were gushing out with enough power that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth. 23 stars of battle prowess. Realization suddenly came to Ling Han, and he said, "This fatty has cultivated an unusual technique, causing him to look shockingly fat at usual times. Yet, in truth, it is a unique body cultivation method that would greatly increase the tolerance of his body." For a genius like Ma Duobao, after failing once to split open the skies, how could it be that he would repeat his previous actions once more? In the shattering void tier, the difference of a star meant the difference between heaven and earth. The Eye of Heavenly Tao had reached the limit of its battle prowess, and most likely, so had Ma Duobao. Looking at how veins were popping out on his forehead, he could not possibly maintain this kind of battle prowess for too long. However, Ma Duobao had the oppressive advantage of a star of battle prowess, and that was much too crucial. Hong, hong, hong. With him brandishing the mountain and river axe in successive attacks, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was continuously sent flying. That place that had been torn open twice successively suddenly split open, and dripped blood. Long live! Beneath them, cheers surged like an ocean wave. Even Ling Han could feel his blood racing. Although the Eye of Heavenly Tao had been injured twice, that was the action of an immortal, but what about now? It had finally been wounded by the hand of a mortal. Battle prowess of 23 stars of shattering void tier could suppress even the Eye of Heavenly Tao. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was bleeding, and a rain of blood also began streaming down. This was the sorrow of the realm. "I this day shall massacre the skies and establish my nation." Ma Duobao laughed loudly, announcing his noble aspirations. The mountain and river axe exuded a brilliant light, delivering blows that gradually enlarged that wound on the Eye of Heavenly Tao. At first, even if the Eye of Heavenly Tao was no match for him, it would not have lost so easily, either. However, it had been wounded by unprecedented ultimate elites 2 times recently, so it had actually lost a great deal of its vitality. And now, it had encountered an opponent with battle prowess of 23 stars of shattering void tier, which finally became the straw that broke the camel's back. The Eye of Heavenly Tao retreated in defeat, little by little. The heavens were weeping blood, but there were also trumpet calls echoing in the world that would cause one's blood to race. This was the encouragement for a hero. Splitting open the skies was the grandest, most important act of a small world. "Eliminate!" Ma Duobao shouted loudly, and the mountain and river axe shot out its brightest strike. Hong! The Eye of Heavenly Tao was actually slashed apart, endless blood spraying out, pouring out from either half from the skies. As blood poured, it continued to burn. Before even reaching the ground, the blood was burnt to ash. Ma Duobao drew back the axe, his gaze fixed on the skies. Now that the stumbling block had been swept aside, he only needed to break through the realm barrier and tear open a large enough hole. He would then be able to bring this entire realm into the immortal realm. Open! He shouted loudly, raising the mountain and river axe high, and mercilessly struck at the skies. One strike followed another as battle prowess of 23 stars blasted out without any reservations. The world was torn apart, and it was no longer the darkness of the empty void before them, for a foggy, extremely vague sight was revealed. Through this hazy view, everyone could vaguely see a new world. Was that the immortal realm? Ma Duobao showed off even more of his godly might. The mountain and river axe struck madly, determined to slash through this haze. Open, open, it was really going to be split open. That world's view was becoming increasingly distinct. Ling Han could not help but feel excited, his hands gripped into fists, appearing to be very nervous. Shua! However, right at that moment, a sword flash actually slashed out from that piece of sky, and struck Ma Duobao directly. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.